Chapter Fry Starlight's POV. One day left. Sitting atop one of the tallest buildings within the Shadow Sect, I gazed over the vast expanse with empty eyes and a face darkened by weariness. Larger now than Belgrade, the imperial capital itself. High walls and towering defenses turned it into a fortress. The engineer had completed his work here, then vanished without a trace, as if he had never been here in the first place. His disappearance at this exact moment, I couldn't help but suspect it was intentional. He'd helped me easily over the past few days, asking for nothing in return. But looking back now, perhaps the entire thing had been a setup. A carefully laid trap leading me straight into a pit of despair far deeper than anything I had fallen into before. Or maybe I had already fallen into it. My relationship with the engineer was never equal. He could appear before me whenever he wished. But no matter how much I searched, I would never find him unless he allowed it. But I was certain of one thing. He was still near, watching me. He had always been close from the very beginning. In the end, every move he made, every question he answered, every moment of guidance he offered, all of it served a greater purpose, a goal he had likely written out long before I ever crossed his path. And now, it felt like my current situation was just another step on the path he had prepared for me. It was as if a bottomless abyss had opened within me, devouring me from the inside, swallowing me in a storm of tangled emotions. It was suffocating, but somehow my face showed none of it, not a trace of the feelings that tore through my heart with every passing second. I couldn't do anything except sit there quietly, powerless, unable to find a solution to this overwhelming dilemma. But I couldn't sit there forever. There was only one day left. Time. If only I had more time. The thought crossed my mind, but I dismissed it just as quickly. No. Even if I did, nothing would change. Either way, I was the one responsible for what happened to Danzo, and I would be the one responsible for whatever came next. It was a heavy burden, one that crushed my shoulders without mercy. But I had no choice but to keep moving forward, because no one else could do it but me. And so, I rose quietly to my feet, casting one last glance at the sect. Then in the next second I was gone, vanishing into thin air as I teleported back to the Empire. That night I visited Uriel at the temple, the church's top saint candidate, 5 full years older than me. With her golden hair and noble aura, she shone as brilliantly as ever, drawing all eyes wherever she went. I'm sorry, Uriel. I keep coming to you for help, asking again and again without giving anything in return. And here I am, asking for your help once more. I truly am sorry. I apologized sincerely, but she quickly waved her hands, cutting me off, concern written all over her face. There's no need to apologize. I'll help you anytime. So please, don't wear that face. That's what she said. What face was she talking about? I wondered. I had no idea. There was no mirror here to show. I thought I was keeping my emotions hidden, so I didn't know what she meant. Still, I nodded to her in gratitude. Uriel hesitated for a moment but soon steeled herself to help me once again. And so, I unsheathed the Dark Sister, my black katana. It's simple. I need you to infuse it with your holy power once more. That's all. I gave her a faint smile. We've done it once before. It'll be much easier this time and won't take long. I was certain of that. After I'd used her power to save Sansa in the past, the Dark Sister had grown accustomed to her holy aura. This time it would accept her power far more quickly. Uriel Platini knew this too, though hesitation still flickered across her face. Can I ask, what are you planning to do with this power? She wanted the truth. It was a bit intrusive of her. But I didn't mind. After all, she was the one helping me. Last time, her power was used to save Sansa. But this time, I'm going to kill a demon. I answered simply, causing her eyes to widen in surprise. My answer was vague. But it was the truth. Instead, she simply did what I asked of her. And the Dark Sister amplified aura. And with it, Uriel's holy power surged within the blade, multiplying in strength several times over. just as I had intended. Thank you. I thanked her sincerely before turning to leave. But she stopped me, gripping my shoulder. What is it? Let me come with you, she said, her voice urgent. You'll need holy power, right? Wouldn't it be better if I came in person instead of just lending you my power through the sword? Uriel sensed something was wrong. Her instincts told her as much, especially after I told her I was going to kill a demon. I guess I shouldn't have said that. You really are kind, Uriel. That's why everyone loves you. And that's why I love you. Gently removing her hand from my shoulder, I took a few steps back. But I'm sorry. This is something only I can do. It was my responsibility alone. I couldn't let her carry the burden of what I was about to face. And so I apologized. But she didn't give up, which left me no choice but to disappear, using the teleportation ability I'd recently acquired. An ability that only reminded me of my failures. In that moment, I left Uriel alone in the temple. She stood there, staring at the empty space where I'd been, whispering softly to herself, "Will you really be able to bear this?" She didn't know exactly what was happening, but what she saw in me was enough to tell her just how unbearable this weight was. I was truly desperate. Outside the temple, I wandered quietly, leaving its grounds behind and walking the streets of Belgrade. It's snowing. A warm cloud of breath escaped my lips as I stopped in place, staring at the cold snowflakes brushing against my face. It was the heart of winter, so the snowfall wasn't surprising. It covered everything in white, blanketing the streets and rooftops. This was the final night. Only a few hours remained, and night had already fallen. But the air was peaceful, calm, no different from any other day. The Empire was busy with countless matters. The looming war, the aftermath of recent events, but I was unaware of any of it, having isolated myself from the world over the past month. The only thing filling my mind was my sick friend, who had only hours left. Hours before the moment of truth. Preparing for that moment, I met with my other friend, who, in the empty, dark alleys where not even a breath could be heard, I stood face to face with Ghost, who had come the moment I summoned him. Ghost said nothing at first. He simply stood there, staring at my face, unable, and that silence irritated me more than I thought it would. "You're all looking at me like that?" I asked with a faint smile, one that couldn't hide the weakness behind it. Ghost answered my question with one of his own. "What happened?" Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh weakly. So it was that obvious? Chapter 442. Turning Point 2. And here I thought I had learned to control my expressions perfectly. I was completely wrong. I was still the same person after all. No matter how much I suffered, no matter how much stronger I became, no matter how much more I understood of the world around me, nothing had changed. If anything, it had only gotten harder. Face to face with Ghost, I opened my mouth and spoke a few words. And in that moment, Ghost's eyes widened in shock. His expression twisted in disbelief. For the first time ever, I saw Ghost's face break into such raw emotion. Unable to accept what he had just heard from me, he asked again, "Are you serious right now?" In response, I nodded. "Yes." Lowering my head, I continued, "There's no other way. This is the only thing we can do." I spoke in a calm, quiet voice, and that seemed to infuriate Ghost even more. He lunged forward and punched me hard across the face. The blow sent me stumbling backward, crashing into the cold wall behind me. But he wasn't done. Ghost tackled me to the ground, grabbing my collar as we rolled across the snow, soaking my clothes completely. He was truly angry. "I don't understand you, Fry. I thought I did once. But now I realize just how wrong I was." Slowly, a thin line of blood slipped from the corner of my mouth, the aftermath of Ghost's punch. Tasting the bitter iron of blood, feeling his grip on my collar tighten, I met his gaze in silence, unable to answer him. His reaction was a result of what I had told him earlier. I had asked for his help. The Silver Dragon Guild was guarding Danzo, so if I wanted to get him out without anyone noticing, I needed Ghost's skills as an assassin. And the influence of the Shadow Court. With his help, we could extract Danzo without raising any alarms. And once we were far enough away, I would finish it. I would end it. I would kill him. Truthfully, I could have simply teleported direct. That's why I needed to take him somewhere remote and isolated, where no one would be caught in the... And that was what Ghost couldn't accept. Didn't you say you'd save him no matter what it took? That you'd do whatever it required? That's your specialty, isn't it? Surviving the Moonlight family, winning the Victoriad, journeying to Launder, staying alive alone in the Ultras continent when everyone thought you were dead, defeating 1,000. You've always found a way. So what's different now? Ghost shouted, his voice raw and breaking. Something I had rarely, if ever, heard from him. His relationship with Danzo had been rocky at first. They bickered endlessly. But over time, Ghost came to respect Danzo, to see him as a friend. And that was why he couldn't accept what I was saying now. He'd watched countless people die in front of him before. But this time, it was different. I tried. I spoke quietly. I tried with everything I had. I did everything I could. But in the end, I failed. I underestimated the devil's seed, treating it like any ordinary curse. But there was a reason why surviving it was impossible. The one who created the seed had already transcended the law of life and death. He made the seed a living creature in its own right. Separating it from Danzo was impossible. They had become one. To save him, I needed a power that could also surpass the law of life and death, something that existed within nameless memories. But acquiring that power was utterly impossible, because I was human. To obtain that power, I would have had to do what Nameless did, spending countless lifetimes studying every species and creature, slaughtering an uncountable number of beings just to complete his mad research. And even if I had an immortal body and infinite time like him, I doubted I could have achieved what he did. I was not Nameless. I didn't have his wisdom, nor a fraction of his power. So how could I ever hope to acquire such a power, when I only had a few hours left until the final quest ended? You cannot defeat a world-breaking ability unless you have another world-breaking ability of equal or greater magnitude. That's what the engineer told me. It was impossible from the start. My failure was inevitable. Maybe there was another way, something I could have found if I still had a question left for the system. But I used that long ago. That was why the engineer said I would regret it. That's what he meant. Whatever happens to Danzo now, it's my fault. No one else's. Hearing that, Ghost fell silent for a while before speaking again, his voice filled with bitterness. Why Danzo, of all people? Even if the devil's seed was real, he couldn't understand why it ended up in the hands of the Ultras. A complete devil's seed was rare, immensely powerful. His presence here on Earth made no sense. And of all the people in the world, it ended up inside Danzo. Why? He wasn't special. He was just an ordinary human. Nothing more, nothing less. Most likely, I'm the reason for that too. I once thought it was just bad luck. But I was wrong. Something like this doesn't happen by chance. Whether it was the engineer, the Demon King, or someone else pulling the strings behind the scenes, this was planned. And the reason Danzo became the target was because he was close to me. That's all. We'd reached the point of no return. Ghost stared at me for a long time, a storm of mixed emotions. He wanted to call me a liar, to claim that everything I said was nonsense, that there was no proof the seed even existed. But then, he remembered all the bizarre phenomena he had witnessed while staying by my side. And he knew I wouldn't say something like this without reason. I saw a trace of contempt in his eyes, fleeting, born of the heat of the moment. There, in those desolate alleys, on ground blanketed by cold snow, we stood in silence for a long while. Then, after a few moments, Ghost stood up and turned his back to me. "I'll help you." His words caught me off guard. I hadn't expected him to agree. "Ghost!" I called, unable to stop myself, but he continued, his voice calm once more. "I chose to be your shadow. That's why I'll share this burden with you. I'll carry this sin. But, Fry, turning to face me. You know what happens next, don't you? Once we cross this line, there's no going back. We'll carry the consequences, face the punishment when the time comes. Are you ready for that? I am. But after killing Danzo with my own hands, I and every time I didn't know what, but I was certain I wouldn't be the same person. I tried not to dwell. It was only a matter of time now. Ghost saw right through my turmoil, but he didn't say anything. He simply turned and began walking away. I'll stay where you are until I contact you. When the time comes, prepare to stain your hands with blood. I said nothing, and I was left alone, lying on the cold snow. I wanted to leave, but my body wouldn't move. All I could do was stay there quietly, waiting. The weak have no right to decide anything in this world. Only the strong get to shape their lives the way they want. Only they have the power to dictate the fate of others. I was weak, pathetically weak. And that weakness, that's why the powerful swarmed around me, steering my life as they pleased. It's why my father died protecting me. Why so many others perished. And now why I was about to kill Danzo. All of this, because I was too weak. But what kind of strength would it take to break free from this cage? Would I have to become a heartless monster like Nameless? Or a tyrant like Agaroth wielding overwhelming power? If that was the answer, what price would I have to pay to reach it? And could I even bear it? I don't know. I didn't know anything. I had always been this way. And in the end, nothing had changed. Perseverance doesn't guarantee success. No matter how hard you struggle, no matter how much you try, success is never promised. This is life. It throws you wherever it wants, never where you choose. What a cruel world. Leaning against the wall, I sat there quietly, waiting for the moment of truth. Chapter 443. Turning Point 3. End of Volume 2. That night, the snow fell endlessly from the sky, while the sun slowly rose on the horizon, announcing the beginning of a new day for the Empire. Time remaining until the final mission's deadline. 1 hour. The notification reflected coldly in Frey's eyes as he walked forward at a slow, steady pace, dragging a wheelchair up the slopes of a distant hill. As expected, the Shadow Court had moved with flawless precision and terrifying speed, carrying out the task Frey Starlight had entrusted to them, with Ghost personally leading the operation. Without any resistance, they infiltrated the Silver Dragon Guild's headquarters and extracted Danzo from within, bringing him to Frey's side. Danzo remained unconscious in his wheelchair, his body wrapped carefully in warm clothing, thick blankets covering his paralyzed legs to keep him as comfortable as possible. Frey figured this was Ghost's doing. A quiet, considerate gesture. Ghost himself lingered nearby but chose not to appear, leaving Frey alone with Danzo for what had to be done. Elsewhere, the Shadow Court's assassins secured the entire area, ensuring that nothing would interfere with what was about to happen. Even though they were far from the imperial capital, Belgrade, the Silver Dragon Guild had already discovered Danzo's disappearance. The capital was likely in chaos now, and it was only a matter of time before they tracked down their location. There wasn't much time left, and with every passing second, Frey's face grew darker and darker, until at last, the summit came into view, where the morning sun cast its distant rays upon them. Danzo looked terribly weak. Throughout the journey, he would wake briefly, only to slip back into unconsciousness moments later. It was probably the effect of the sedatives Ghost and his team had used, ensuring everything would proceed smoothly. Frey preferred it that way. He didn't want to meet his friend's gaze. But, as if fate was mocking him, with less than an hour remaining, Danzo slowly opened his eyes, consciousness returning at the worst possible moment. As his mind cleared, confusion spread across his face. To Danzo, only moments ago he had been asleep in his room. Now he found himself in a strange, isolated place he didn't recognize. Then, in that moment, he caught sight of Frey pushing his wheelchair. Seeing his friend eased his heart, reassuring him, if only a little. "Frey, where are we?" Danzo's voice was weak, still dulled by the lingering effects of the sedative. It made him seem even more pitiful than ever before. Receiving no answer, he tried again. "Fry, what's going on? Why are we here?" He kept asking, confused and growing more anxious by the second. But Fry didn't reply. He simply continued walking in silence, his face cast in shadows, dark circles heavy beneath his eyes. He looked utterly broken, exhausted. When they finally reached the summit, Fry released the wheelchair, letting it sit still in the snow. He then paced back and forth for some time, walking in circles, lost. Every now and then, he'd stop and stare at the sunrise, his mind clearly adrift, burdened by 1,000 thoughts. Danzo noticed the faint tremors shaking Frey's shoulders from time to time. That's when he realized something was very wrong. "Fry!" Danzo called softly, but Fry cut him off before he could say another word. The demon seed. With his back turned, unable to face him, Fry spoke, his voice shaking, unfamiliar. "There's a malicious entity inside you. A demon seed. It's fused with your body. You and it have become one." Without warning, Fry laid it all out. He spoke of the demon seed and what had infected Danzo. He spoke without pause, spilling the truth in its entirety. Listening in silence, Danzo recalled all those times Fry had asked if he felt anything strange in his body. He had thought Fry was simply worried about his health. But now, he understood why. The demon inside the seed is incredibly strong. Once he fully awakens, he will seize control of your body and unleash a catastrophe that could kill thousands. There is no cure. Once the seed takes root, it cannot be removed from its host. Frey's voice stumbled from time to time, but in the end, he managed to explain everything clearly. Drawing the darks face to face. "I couldn't save you. I couldn't find a way to cure you. So now, there's only one choice left. If I want to stop the demon inside you, I have to kill you." The moment those words left his mouth, Danzo's eyes widened. But only for a moment. Then his calm returned, as Fry continued speaking in a rushed, breathless tone. "That's why I brought you here. So I could end this, far from everyone else. In a place no one can reach you. With this sword, I'll end your life." Gripping the Dark Sister tightly, Fry stared at Danzo. The latter remained silent for a few seconds, trying to process what he had just heard. It was absurd, wasn't it? For your best friend to suddenly appear out of nowhere, claim that some demon was living inside you, and tell you that killing you was the only way to stop it. Who could possibly believe that? But Fry had to tell him. Whether Danzo believed it or not didn't matter. He just wanted him to know why he was about to die by his hands. Fry expected countless possible reactions. Denial, anger, laughter, or perhaps Danzo calling him insane, telling him to cut the nonsense. But Danzo did none of those things. He simply gave a quiet reply. "I understand." Those two words, spoken softly and calmly, they shook Fry more than any scream could have. His shoulders trembled uncontrollably as he shouted without thinking. "What do you mean you understand?" Raising his sword, Fry screamed, "I just told you I'm about to kill you. How can you respond like that?" He couldn't understand it. Why did his friend accept this so easily? If only Danzo had fought back, yelled at him, cursed him, it would have made things easier. But to accept it so quietly. What the hell was Fry supposed to say to that? Danzo remained calm, watching Frey's turmoil for a while. Letting him speak his heart, Danzo gave a faint smile. "It's simple, Fry. I believe you, and to be honest, this way might be better." "What are you saying?" Fry asked in a strained voice, but Danzo continued speaking, in that same quiet tone. Calm that didn't suit him at all. "I've already died once. What's left of me now is just an empty shell. I left myself behind on the battlefield." Smiling faintly, Danzo glanced down at his paralyzed body, a body he could no longer even move. "You know, Fry, ever since we returned from the Ultras continent, I've always wondered, why did I survive? Out of all the elite students who perished, why was he the only one who lived? I left everything behind. My blood, my strength, my will, everything I lived for. I lost it all on that battlefield. I was supposed to die there, but somehow I survived. Or rather, only a tiny piece of me survived. Hearing those words, Fry understood exactly what his friend meant. Who was Danzo Smasher? A friend, a warrior, a man who always carried that explosive energy, that unbreakable will of steel. He was the one who challenged geniuses far more talented than him, relying solely on his relentless effort. He was loud, strong, and an essential presence in Frey's life. But now, I already burned the candle of my life, burned it to nothing but ash. He was weak, quiet, bound to a wheelchair. That will of steel, shattered like broken glass. The ambitious young man who once lived for the fight had nothing left to live for in this harsh world where only the strong mattered. I believe you, Fry. I'm just a ghost of who I used to be. I should have died that day, but I lived. And then, to Frey's surprise, Danzo smiled, a bittersweet smile. But you know, I'm kind of happy about this. Fry unconsciously took a step back. Danzo, if dying by your hand means preventing a disaster, then I guess it's not such a bad way to go, is it? Danzo, do what you have to do, Fry. And thank you for telling me the truth until the very end. At that moment their eyes met, and that was what hurt Fry the most. For in his friend's eyes, he saw the gaze of a man who had already accepted his fate with open arms. Danzo had come to terms with it. But Fry, he still couldn't bring himself to act. Gripping the dark sister, glowing with sacred light, Fry trembled in place, unable to take that final step. And he knew. This hesitation, this weakness, was an insult to the resolve Danzo had shown. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move forward. Don't hesitate, Fry. This isn't your fault. I know you're hurting, and maybe that pain will stay with you for a long time. But you've always had the strength to move forward, haven't you? Danzo chuckled softly, trying to encourage him. But Fry couldn't return the smile. End it, Fry. Isn't this why you brought me here? Do it. Danzo tried to shout with all his strength. But even then, his voice was faint, fragile. Finish it, my friend. The sun rose in the distance, while snow continued to fall upon their shoulders, as if mourning what was about to happen. Fry raised his sword, placing it gently against Danzo's heart. The demon inside his friend had not awakened yet, so killing Danzo would destroy it as well. One clean strike, using a weapon imbued with powerful holy energy. And the Dark Sister was more than enough for that. With the sword positioned over Danzo's chest, Fry trembled. The Dark Sister itself trembled in his hands. Compared to your pain, my pain will end in a moment. So don't hesitate. There were only minutes left until the mission's end. Knowing that, Fry gritted his teeth, his hands clenching the sword so tightly that his skin nearly tore. Forcing himself to act, he slowly pushed the blade forward, touched Danzo's chest, piercing it inch by agonizing inch, aiming for his heart, counting on this one strike to end his suffering. At that moment, Fry was about to finish it, but he couldn't. The space around him suddenly froze, as if some hidden defense mechanism had been triggered by his actions. Time itself stopped, and then, without warning, the right side of Danzo's face, along with his neck and right shoulder, erupted in a violent explosion of blood. A blood-stained black hand burst forth from within Danzo, aiming straight for Frey's face. Everything slowed to a crawl. Fry watched the hand expand in his vision, every detail clear thanks to his hawk eyes. It was a hand filled with malice. One that carried enough power to blow his face apart and end his life. He knew it. Perhaps the demon inside Danzo had sensed the danger and unleashed this as a final act of defense. It wasn't fully awakened yet, meaning Fry could have easily dodged the attack. But he didn't. Fry stood there motionless, as the hand reached for his life. This is fine. He thought for a moment. It was fine. Dying here at Danzo's hand wasn't such a bad fate. It was far better than killing his friend with his own hands and bearing that weight for the rest of his life. It was the easy way out, and Fry took it without hesitation. In that moment, he didn't care what would happen if he died. Ignoring the entire world, he simply wanted to rest, to end it all finally. But fate would not grant him such mercy. The dark hand stopped, mere centimeters from his face. It tried to move forward, to kill him, but it couldn't. And that's when Fry realized what had happened. Danzo, with what little awareness remained, was still staring at him with his one remaining eye. With the last drop of his will, Danzo had stopped the hand, saving his friend's life. Danzo couldn't speak in that state, but Fry understood him clearly. Finish it. That's what he was telling him. So Fry smiled. One he hoped would be the last thing Danzo would see, instead of his own pain-ridden face. Then, he drove the Dark Sister into his friend's heart. It happened in an instant. The sword pierced cleanly. Flesh tore, blood spilled, and the light faded from Danzo's eyes, leaving behind only a broken body, half consumed by that demonic arm still protruding from his chest. As for Fry, his world collapsed. His chest burned and froze all at once. He felt an unbearable pain as he fell to his knees beside his friend's lifeless body. Soaked in Danzo's blood, his body trembled uncontrollably. In that chaotic moment, he heard screaming, sobbing, and crying. And when reality slowly returned, he realized all those sounds had been coming from himself. Crumpled over Danzo's corpse, Fry wept. He thought his tears had long since run dry, but they poured freely now, mixing with the blood of his fallen friend. And amid all that, the system notification appeared. The final mission is complete. He'd succeeded. But at what cost? Collapsed beside Danzo, utterly broken, Ghost finally appeared from the shadows. The moment his eyes landed on Danzo's lifeless body, and that monstrous arm protruding from his chest, a pained expression crossed Ghost's face. In that moment he knew Fry had been telling the truth all along. When he turned his gaze to Fry, he saw just how shattered, how destroyed his friend truly was. "We need to go, Fry. The Empire will find this place soon." Ghost's voice was tight with sorrow, but Fry didn't respond. He just clung to Danzo's body, refusing to let go. Seeing this, Ghost finally stepped forward and pulled him away by force. And as he watched his friend in such agony, a sharp regret stabbed through Ghost's chest. I should have done it instead. He'd been used to losing people. He should never have let Fry carry this burden. But what was done was done. With no choice but to comfort his broken friend, Ghost buried his own grief deep inside his heart. And so, the two of them retreated, leaving Danzo's body behind, his blood staining the pure white snow in vivid red. They couldn't even give him a proper burial. And as for Fry, the pain he carried now consumed him even deeper than before. An endless abyss tearing at his soul. Whatever would happen next, this tragedy would cast its shadow over the future. And over Fry most of all. Chapter 444, Echoes of the Cataclysm 1. The world had undergone countless changes, and even the smallest of events cast the darkest shadows, stretching far across the horizon to shape a grim future. Danzo was dead. No, he was killed, brutally, his body left to freeze amidst the snow. In one corner of this bleak scene you could see Fry Starlight, dragged away by his friend Ghost, broken, unable to hold himself together after killing Danzo with his own hands. Now he was forced to live on, bearing the consequences of his actions. What a wretched soul. Fry, a man who didn't even have the freedom to die, yet was forced to kill those dearest to him with his own hands. The weight of that reality crushed him. But Frey's tears were not the only ones shed that day. Elsewhere, an hour later, the Silver Dragon Guild finally reached the same place. There, before the eyes of all his guild members, Adam Smasher embraced the lifeless body of his only son. Adam wept and wailed, feeling the coldness of the life that had escaped his son's body. Danzo was disfigured, a monstrous, demonic hand having burst from within his body, destroying half of his face. With a gaping hole in his chest, he was unmistakably dead. Like a wounded beast, Adam Smasher let out a heartbreaking cry that made even the strongest among those present turn their faces away in pain. That towering man had just lost everything. His wife was gone. His closest friend, Isaac Cloud, was gone. And now his only son, the one he loved above all else, was gone too. Torn between deep sorrow and raging fury, Adam could do nothing but scream until his voice gave out. His eyes burned red with hatred, vowing to hunt down whoever was responsible for his son's death. An eye for an eye, blood for blood. In the end, someone would have to pay the price. And so, the curtain fell on that bloody night, giving way to a new day in the Empire, one shaken by these devastating events. News of Danzo's death spread quickly, and a grand funeral was held in his honor. Many high-ranking officials attended, along with Danzo's friends, including Snow Lionheart, the hero of the church, who had been secluded in solitary training ever since surviving the ordeal in the Ultras continent. Who could have imagined that the first thing awaiting him upon his return would be the news of Danzo's death? It was a painful blow. Most of the surviving elite students gathered at the funeral. No one was allowed to see Danzo one last time. Adam didn't want anyone to witness the monstrous state his son had been left in. Everything was done in silence. Amidst hearts grieving, and others burning with hatred toward whoever was behind this tragedy. But among them all, Danzo's closest friend was missing. Fry Starlight was nowhere to be seen. Everyone came to pay their respects, whether close or distant. Even Ada Starlight herself was present. But the one closest to Danzo was absent, nowhere to be found. Ghost, too, was missing, raising even more questions. Yet since they were Danzo's closest friends, many assumed they simply couldn't bear the pain, retreating from sight to grieve in silence. But the truth was far removed from that simple explanation. In the end, Danzo was buried. And with him, the final mission that had broken Frey's heart and left his suffering to linger on. Time moved on, and the turmoil within the Empire continued to grow. In the western reaches of the Empire, specifically in the territory under House Moonlight's command, the Emperor's delegation gathered, led personally by Sir Alone, waiting at Winterfell's Grand Port. The port was vast and heavily fortified, functioning as a military base in its own right. It was from this very place that Mikar Valyrian had launched his ill-fated raid, the one that ended in disaster, leaving the Empire's main forces missing in action. The consequences of the defeat at Shiskler Bay were massive. Losing the Empire's primary military strength was only one of the many crises shaking the nation. Now, Sir Alone was forced to face the anger of the people, who had finally broken their silence. Previously, when the Ultras invaded and slaughtered countless citizens and their children, the Emperor made no move. But now, only because his own sons and the children of the great noble houses had been kidnapped, Mikar immediately rallied all forces for a raid many described as suicidal and reckless. How many fathers left their families to answer the Emperor's call? How many parents said their tearful goodbyes to their children, praying for their survival in the coming battle? And how many ambitious men had their dreams crushed, now listed among the missing? All of this weighed heavily on the hearts of the people, especially after the latest widespread assault by the Ultras. This is why the mission entrusted to the Sword Saint, Vendrick, carried such critical importance. There was no room for mistake. Standing there, accompanied by many veteran warriors who once again raised their swords for his sake, Sir Alone Valyrian watched from afar as a broken ship slowly drifted toward the harbor, carried by the waves. In mere moments, the vessel docked, and one by one, the survivors disembarked. And first among them was the Sword Saint himself, alongside the Grand Assassin, Mist Umbra, and the church's bishop, Joseph Bladier. All of them looked exhausted and wounded, as if they had just survived a long, grueling battle. Vendrick! Sir Alone spoke softly as he approached his old friend. For a moment, Sir Alone feared the mission had failed, given that the Sword Saint's ship was the only one to return. But Vendrick surprised him, pulling a black cube from his torn robe. Here. This is what you were looking for. Tossing it toward Sir Alone, Vendrick walked past him without another word. Holding the cube in his hands, Sir Alone was momentarily confused, until he realized what it was. His son, along with the others, was sealed within it. The Sword Saint had succeeded. Sir Alone turned to call out to Vendrick, wanting to finally speak the words that had weighed on his heart. But the Sword Saint simply raised his hand. "I know. She's dead, isn't she?" Stunned, Sir Alone froze, staring at Vendrick, wondering how he knew of Millicent's death. But there was nothing left for him to do but apologize. "I'm sorry. It was his mistake after all. He was the one who had sent them back into battle in the first place." Yet Vendrick did not blame him. He said nothing at all, his face void of expression, as he walked away slowly, gazing up at the sky. We cannot escape the chains of fate. He had known this would happen. It was inevitable. But even knowing that, he could do nothing but bury his sorrow and continue living. Ever since the Blue-Eyed One had shown him the future long ago, the Sword Saint had prepared himself for such tragedies. Chapter 445. Echoes of the Cataclysm 2. As Vendrick walked away, both Miss Umbra and Joseph Bladier stared at his back, awe and dread written across their faces. "Sir Alone, who is that man, really?" Joseph Bladier asked, his voice low as he recalled the events of the past days. When they tried to retrieve the cube imprisoning Mikar and the others, they were forced to dive into the ocean. Waiting there was one of Beatrice's puppets, armed with a terrifying array of deadly spells. And alongside it, thousands of nightmare sea creatures. The sight was horrifying. But before Vendrick's sword, none of it mattered. His swordsmanship was unlike anything they had ever seen, even in all their years of battle. Every strike he unleashed seemed capable of cutting the sea itself, obliterating the nightmare beasts and destroying Beatrice's puppet before she could even cast a spell. He was overwhelming. Sir Alone could only nod. "That man is the sword with which I built my glory and cut down my enemies." It wasn't surprising to him that Vendrick had succeeded. The Sword Saint was already stronger than him. And yet, after all these years of fighting side by side, Sir Alone had never truly understood his old friend. And he doubted he ever would. But right now, the cube in his hands was his top priority. "What exactly is this thing?" "It's a magical prison. A high-level spell unlike anything we've seen before," Miss Umbra explained. Behind him stood 3 sorcerers, each so powerful that even the weakest among them had reached the S+ rank. Hearing this, Sir Alone assumed breaking the cube would be a monumental task, but the sorcerers quickly dispelled that thought. This prison contains a vast internal space. From the outside, it seems small, but within it's enormous. After analyzing it for days, we've decided to call it the Prison Cube. It's so strong that even SS+ rank fighters, the most powerful on Earth, wouldn't be able to escape from it. Sir Alone raised a brow, astonished by what he was hearing. The strongest warriors alive were all in the SS+ rank. So, if the Prison Cube can withstand their attacks, doesn't that mean breaking it is impossible? Yes and no. Miss Umbra replied again, explaining the situation fully. It's impregnable from the inside, making escape impossible. But from the outside, we've discovered it's far weaker. If we apply enough destructive force, we should be able to break through it. In other words, it would be simple enough, as long as the cube was already in their hands. But that didn't comfort Sir Alone Valerian. Instead, it filled him with unease. "I don't understand. If that's true, then why didn't the enemy bother to take the cube back?" If he were in their place, Sir Alone would have locked the cube away in the most secure corner of the Ultras continent, where the Empire would never recover it. But Beatrice had simply left it within their grasp. Why? The Iron Emperor couldn't comprehend his enemy's way of thinking. This was the first time he had faced an opponent like this, as if they never saw them as true opponents, but merely playmates to pass the time with, companions for their amusement, nothing more. But what on earth was that terrifying witch thinking during the battle? Sir Alone could not find the answer. nor could Mist Umbra or Joseph Blatter, who shared in his ignorance. Well, that doesn't matter now. Grasping the cube, Sir Alone's body began to glow. What matters is freeing our forces trapped inside. Relying on that hope, Sir Alone and his men evacuated the harbor completely, placing the cube at its center, knowing how many soldiers were sealed within. In the sky above, Sir Alone, Mist Umbra, and Blatter soared into the air. Then, without warning, the three of them unsheathed their weapons and unleashed their auras at full force. With a joint attack containing an overwhelming amount of destructive power, they struck the cube. Under the pressure of an SS Plus rank fighter and two others in the SS rank, the prison cube couldn't withstand the force. In just a few seconds, its outer shell began to crack. And then, the cube finally exploded. At that moment, it expanded wildly, covering the entire harbor in an ominous light. From within, shattered ships and people began falling from the sky as they were released, crashing violently into the ground. The explosion caused devastating destruction, and corpses were scattered everywhere. And after only a few more seconds, the true horror of what had been inside was revealed. It was this sight that caused the faces of Sir Alone Valyrian and his companions to darken instantly. One after another, the captives fell from the cube. But they were no longer the same fighters they had once been. They were nothing but skeletal remains, stripped of flesh and skin, collapsing across the battlefield. Staring at this nightmare, Sir Alone Valyrian could only clench his fist so tightly that the pressure of his aura nearly destroyed everything around him. What the hell is going on here? No matter where he went, no matter how much he searched through the wreckage of the shattered ships, all he found were skeletons. They were all dead. And then, after a grueling search, a group of survivors finally appeared before them. There, sitting atop the wreckage of a ship, was the Emperor. Mikar Valyrian. Wearing his battered fume knight armor, the once mighty Emperor now looked so frail that his supposedly perfect body barely filled the armor anymore. His eyes were completely dark as he sat there, staring into the void, utterly drained of strength. Around him, many of the Empire's strongest warriors had collapsed as well, their bodies weak and nearly lifeless. Iris, Lord of the Sunlight family, and his brother Gal, Melina lay unconscious in one corner, and the Emperor's brothers, Ivar and Luke Valyrian, were both sprawled helplessly on the ground. Standing before them, Sir Alone remained silent. Mikar was the only one who still retained consciousness. Lifting his head slightly, Mikar now seemed several years older. When he saw Sir Alone, a strained smile appeared on his face. "Father," he spoke with difficulty, but Sir Alone Valyrian's rage flared instantly. "You disappointment." Grabbing his son by the chest plate, Sir Alone lifted Mikar effortlessly with one hand. "You dare show your wretched face to me, still alive, when everyone around you died because of you?" A surge of light gathered in Sir Alone's fist, ready to crush Mikar then and there. Yet despite this, Mikar only laughed in response. "Disappointment? Those are big words coming from you, old man." Kay. Sir Alone was truly about to end his son's life, but Mist Umbra and several soldiers quickly intervened to stop him. "Calm down, Sir Alone. Do you even understand what you're about to do? He's an SS Plus rank warrior. And your son, that frail man, despite everything, remained one of the Empire's strongest weapons. Losing him would be a disaster." Reluctantly responding to his soldiers' pleas, Sir Alone hurled Mikar's body aside violently, unwilling to look at him any longer. "Throw that useless fool somewhere out of my sight. I don't have time to deal with such a disappointing son." Turning away, Sir Alone shifted his focus to the others collapsed on the ground. But Mikar wasn't finished speaking. "Old man, I see your back still straight, despite all these years." Mikar's voice was faint, almost a whisper, but it reached Sir Alone clearly. "If you still have all that strength, maybe you should have remained Emperor until the day you died, instead of tossing your mantle onto me. Filthy old man." Mikar sneered, but Sir Alone didn't even bother to turn around. To him, His eldest son was no longer anything more than an insect. And an insect was no longer enough to warrant his attention. Just like that, Mikar was dragged away. Meanwhile, Sir Alone turned his gaze toward the other survivors. Chapter 446. Echoes of the Cataclysm 3. They were all in a pitiful state, but alive thanks to their SS-tier vitality. What happened to them? Turning sharply, Sir Alone questioned Mist Umbra. How long have they been trapped in here? In response, Mist gave him the exact number. Counting today, it's been 58 days inside the cube. 58 days. They had plenty of supplies, and that amount of time isn't enough to bring SS-ranked warriors to this state. That's impossible. But in that moment, Sir Alone's eyes fell on the wall Mikar had been leaning against earlier. What he saw made him freeze. The wall was covered in carvings. Tally marks. Day after day, one after another. So many, far too many, covering the entire surface of the ship. This was no mere 58 days. 2 years and 231 days. With great effort, Iris Sunlight spoke, his hollow eyes meeting Sir Alone's gaze. Hearing the words of the aged Iris, the terrible truth finally sank in for everyone. It had been 58 days outside the cube. But the passage of time inside the cube was entirely different. For those trapped within, 58 days had stretched into 2 years and 231 days. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. They exhausted all their supplies and were left to be devoured by hunger and thirst. It broke them to the point where, eventually, they began to consume one another. The flesh of those who died first, just to survive. They ate human flesh. They drank blood. They became monsters. The very kind they once despised. Just to cling to life. This was the witch's game. Gazing into the distant horizon, Sir Alone finally began to understand his enemy, even if only a little. He could almost swear he heard her laughter. The laughter of Beatrice. She was toying with them. Everything to her was nothing but a game. And that alone made the Iron Emperor's blood boil. The witch's game, huh? Fine then, let's play. With his body radiating intense light, Sir Alone Valyrian stood at the forefront, igniting his thirst for war. We'll play, but this time by my own rules. The Ultras wanted war, and war is exactly what they will get. There was no turning back now. This will be a war of annihilation. He would spare neither young nor old, neither men nor women. Sir Alone had sworn. He would slaughter them all. By the end of this war, either the Ultras or the Empire, one of them would vanish from the face of the earth. Catastrophe was inevitable. And as Sir Alone Valyrian turned away, leaving with those he could still save, the sky above them cracked open, answering his will with a terrifying cry, a dreadful omen, a warning that hell itself was all that awaited them. On that day, at that hour, the whole world looked up at the sky and saw creatures descending from the void, screeching without end, as if the end of the world had arrived. They looked like colossal black ravens, their immense wings blotting out the sky as they soared through the air, crying endlessly. Their screeches were terrifying, carrying countless emotions within them. At times they sounded mournful, at others joyful. Sometimes furious, sometimes ecstatic. The world trembled beneath their cries. Yet they did nothing, simply circling the skies without purpose, crying without end. Massive black birds, as if they had crawled straight out of hell. Reactions varied, but among them, Fry Starlight gazed at the birds, his face shadowed with darkness. From his lips, he whispered their name. Chaos Eaters. The disaster was inevitable. The world continued to change with every passing second, as shocking events tore through everything, one after another. Meanwhile, within the human empire, Emperor Mikar Valyrian was returned to his castle, completely withdrawn from public view. He was in a miserable state, driving away anyone who dared approach him, demanding to be left alone. His body was frail and weak after all he had endured, and so, he found himself staggering between the walls of his castle. his steps faltering as he wandered through one corridor after another. The deeper he went, Mikar Valerian finally reached his private sanctuary, a place he had never allowed anyone else to approach. Opening the door to that secret room, Mikar stepped into a chamber completely frozen over. An empty room, filled with nothing but ice. And within mere moments, he collapsed, leaning against a massive ice coffin that stood at the center of the room. The moment he fell, he began laughing like a madman, his body trembling violently. Damn it, 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 damn it. He cursed over and over, sobbing all the while. Everything had fallen apart for him overnight. Why did it all come to this? He cried out, then burst into hysterical laughter once again, turning his gaze toward the coffin behind him. If only time could turn back to those days. Back then, everything was fine. Times when he had lived in peace, and everything had been as it should. Why did you leave me? Mikar continued sobbing like a madman as he clung to that coffin. Everything was fine when you were here. With a trembling body, Mikar stared at the coffin, and within it, the face of a man was revealed, a man who had long since closed his eyes to this world. Chaos Eaters. Among the many strange creatures of this world, the Chaos Eaters are seen as harbingers of doom, omens of an approaching disaster. They resemble giant birds with massive wings. Their forms an eerie fusion of various bird species, covered in black skin and bearing glowing white eyes. Chaos Eaters emerge from the void, doing nothing but soaring through the skies without interacting with any living creature. Yet, no matter where they appear, a terrifying catastrophe inevitably follows shortly after. Over time, the races of the world came to understand their meaning, recognizing that the appearance of Chaos Eaters marks the arrival of calamity. They have appeared countless times before. During the Pantheon massacre thousands of years ago, caused by Agaroth and Crimson, or during the extermination of the ghouls and the downfall of the nation manipulated and destroyed by Weskier. Every time they appeared, disaster struck soon after. In truth, despite their numbers, the Chaos Eaters are but fragments of a single entity, one of the mysterious great ones whose nature no one has ever been able to comprehend. If you ever see them soaring in the skies, prepare yourself. Disaster is inevitable. Chapter 447. Whispers in the Darkness. Fry Starlight's POV. The room was dark. Here in my lonely chamber, the place where I first opened my eyes in this world. How many days had passed? I found myself wondering. Sitting on my bed, I stared at the system interface with a face that no longer reflected any sort of expression or emotion. Every time I thought I had reached my limit, I told myself, "This is it, Fry. You've reached your peak. You've endured the greatest suffering and torment, and each time, somehow, I found a way to get through it and keep moving forward, convincing myself that everything was fine, that I had already seen it all. After everything I'd been through, I believed I had experienced every possible form of suffering, and that nothing could surprise me anymore. But every single time, life proved just how foolish I was, dragging me into a brand new hell. And most likely, all of this was part of that engineer's plan, along with whoever else stood behind him. This was the kind of fate prepared for me, a destiny I seemed unable to escape. And perhaps this system interface stretched before my eyes was the very reflection of that cursed fate awaiting me. Final mission. Save or kill Danzo. Completed. Reward, 15,000 achievement points. Skill, Screenshot, SS rank. The screenshot skill allows the user to release a powerful type of aura that manipulates the reality around them. When the skill is used, it captures everything within the user's surroundings. Freezing time for everything inside the screenshot's range for 1 second. Ding. Missions updated. Main missions. Kill 10,000 Ultra's soldiers, 5,000 achievement points. Defeat one of the Ultra's major powers, 5,000 achievement points. Final mission, Eliminate Weskir's shadows. Mission description will be revealed when the time comes. Without realizing it, a bitter smile appeared on my face as I read the mission list. The system had already begun weaving my new path, guiding me toward the fate it had prepared for me. This time, the final mission was issued right from the start, and reading it only made my smile deepen. Weskir. Was the system talking about that demon? The fourth-ranked one, often called the filthiest demon to ever exist? For his name to appear on the system interface meant one way or another that monster was nearby. But I had to say, the system had completely lost its mind this time. I mean, I'm supposed to face the fourth seat? Do you even realize the scale of his power? Even if he were to face both the Empire and the Ultras alone, he'd slaughter them all in a single day. I found myself unable to believe that such a monster could be my enemy. Weskir's shadows. What I needed to focus on wasn't Weskir himself, but the term shadows. The secret behind the final mission lay there. Once I understood what those shadows meant, I'd know what to do. But what's the point? Despite the weight of these missions and all the chaos that had swept through the Empire, from what happened to Mikar and the others after falling into Beatrice's trap, to the sudden appearance of the Chaos Eaters, those colossal birds soaring through the sky, shrieking as if the end of the world had arrived. After shaking the world with their first appearance, they had now fallen silent, flying aimlessly through the sky. Many tried to reach them to attack them, but no one could even touch them, not even Sir Alone himself. Fortunately, the Chaos Eaters paid no attention to humans. All they did was fly without purpose. Even so, humanity was forced to live in fear watching those creatures above, and they had every reason to be afraid. Many believed the Chaos Eaters were some new kind of nightmare creature, but they weren't. Despite their overwhelming numbers, the Chaos Eaters were merely fragments of a single entity, a higher being belonging to one of the most mysterious races in existence. The Great Ones. Of course, I knew them. I remembered they were supposed to appear at the end of the story I once wrote, back when I was a novelist. As their name implied, the Chaos Eaters fed on chaos. Throughout history, they had appeared many times in various corners of this vast world. Every time it appeared, without exception, a catastrophe would follow. One that shook the entire world to its core. That cry it let out each time was the warning bell, a clear sign that disaster was inevitable. And that chaos was the very sustenance of that mysterious entity. And now it had appeared once again, right here on this earth. In other words, disaster was coming. Without a doubt. Thinking about it, I began to realize just how hopeless this situation truly was. The Chaos Eaters, who had witnessed every massacre in the history of this world. Weskir, the Ultras, the Engineer, the Shadow Sect. Something was about to happen, something far too great to comprehend. And this empire was simply the stage upon which it would unfold. Humans were nothing more than pawns and players in this grand event. And here I was, sitting in the middle of all that chaos, staring at a system that expected me to deal with it somehow. That's why I couldn't help but laugh. It gave me this ability, screenshot, or whatever it was called. So what do you expect from someone who couldn't even save a single friend? When I looked at these hands of mine, I could see it clearly. Danzo's blood still clinging to them. No matter how much I washed them, no matter how much I scrubbed them, the blood never faded. I knew exactly how great the coming disaster was. I knew how dark the future looked. But honestly, I found myself not caring much anymore. Because from the very beginning, I had never moved on from the past. Curled up in my own despair, I couldn't even close these eyes. Because every time I did, I saw him, Danzo, smiling at me as that demonic hand burst from within him. Even in his final moments, he did everything he could to save my life. And in return, what did I do? I drove my sword through his chest and stole from his eyes the light of life that kept him in this world. His ghost had haunted me every day since. And so, once again, I found myself laughing bitterly at my own foolishness. I, who thought I had lost all emotions, found guilt gnawing at my heart without end. Placing my hand over my chest, I listened to the steady beating of my heart. I felt my veins burning, drowning in those hateful emotions. I saw myself as a sinner deserving punishment. For what I had done, I was ready to accept whatever fate awaited me. And at the same time I was angry, furious, and filled with hatred. Hatred for those who tampered with my fate and Danzo's, manipulating us from the shadows until it all ended like this. Hatred for the Ultras, the enemy from whom this curse had come, the ones who caused so many deaths. Hatred for Gvardiel, the man who planted that demonic seed inside Danzo. Sons of bitches. F. R. Ewe/nav/ll.com. All of them, without exception. I had no idea what I was supposed to do, no plan to face all these horrors. All I had was an endless guilt that ate away at my soul without pause, and a raging anger that made me want to draw my sword and kill as many of those bastards as I could. 10,000 Ultras soldiers. Is that what the system wanted from me? Fine. Let it have what it wants. But I wouldn't stop at 10,000. I would go beyond that. I would kill them, tear them apart, bury them all if I had to. The war was coming, and I would be at the very front of it. There, only on the battlefield, could I unleash these feelings. Only in the heat of battle might I find my release. And if, when the time came, I met my punishment on that battlefield, I was fine with that too. Drowning in darkness with blood-stained hands, I continued to wrestle with myself, waiting for the time to come. The time for the war of darkness to begin. I wanted to wield my sword as soon as possible. Please, let it begin. Let the war break out. Let the slaughter begin. Let the killing festival start. Let me kill them. Let me tear them apart. My body trembled without stopping, while the blood on my hands thickened. Kill. Kill. Their blood. The blood of the Ultras. Only when I soaked my hands in their blood would Danzo's blood finally wash away. Only then might I find peace from this torment. So please, let it begin. Trembling endlessly, I hallucinated about blood that wasn't even there. I was slowly losing myself. The edge of madness was drawing near. And then, in that moment, from within the darkness, a pair of slender, pale hands wrapped gently around my chest from behind. I felt a warm body press softly against my back. The darkness doesn't suit you, Fry. She whispered those words calmly beside my ear, as the ivory horns extended from her crown. Sansa. Chapter 448. A Demon's Embrace. Looking at her with tired eyes, I found myself losing all strength in her embrace, letting her do whatever she wished with me. With a gentle smile, she continued holding me close. Life has never been kind to you, my dear Fry. This is the first time I've ever seen you break like this. I'm tired, Sansa. I'm tired, and I can't keep going anymore. This life has taken so much from me. All that's left inside is emptiness, alongside a burning flame that keeps devouring me. And I don't know where to unleash this searing fire. Listening to every word I spoke, Sansa held on to me even tighter. Why didn't you let me finish it? She asked softly. I could have given him a merciful death. Then you wouldn't have needed to stain your hands with your closest friend's blood. Hearing that, I found myself laughing again. She really had tried to end it instead of me. More than once. But I never allowed her to. What happened to Danzo was my fault. Mine alone. And the responsibility is mine to bear. No one else's. Why, Fry? Why do you torture yourself like this? Because I'm a sinner. And this is my punishment. Even if it means losing yourself and surrendering to the fate you've been running from all this time. That's right, I answered without hesitation. As I lay down on the bed beside Sansa, I stared at the ceiling, lying on my back, while she lay beside me, gazing at my face. Tell me, Fry, would you die with me? Hearing that strange question, I turned toward her. With you? I asked unconsciously, and she nodded softly. Look at me. I'm a filthy demon who finds pleasure in the suffering of others. Even your agony right now, tearing you apart, I find it enticing and beautiful. Placing her hand over my face, Sansa smiled warmly. For me, I've already lost everything. To the world, Sansa Valyrian is already dead. But there are still some eyes that see me as I truly am. Her cold fingers wiped my tired eyes, and she let out a light laugh. You're the only reason I keep going, Fry. Even when I'm a filthy demon contradicting all that is alive. So if you ever find yourself unable to go on, if life tortures you beyond what you can bear, then let's die together. I can drown us both in my shadows. We'll die at the same moment, peaceful, gentle death, and escape from the horrors of this world. Die together, I repeated quietly, and smiled as well. What she said really did sound beautiful. Free/novelbin desio, a perfect escape from all this suffering and torment that had torn me apart until now. We could do it someday, somewhere far away, where no one can see us. Without realizing it, I followed along with her suicidal thoughts, causing her to nod. Someday, but not today, right? I didn't answer. I just stayed silent. Dying now, here with Sansa, was that even possible? To begin with, the engineer would never allow me to die, so there was no point in even trying. But for some reason, I felt that wasn't the real answer. You can't die, can you? As if seeing right through me, Sansa spoke quietly. It was as though she had known this from the very start. That's only natural, Fry. You still have so much left to live for. So much, really? What are you talking about? I asked, trying to deny her words, but she was already several steps ahead. You have your sister, Ada. You have other friends, just as precious as the one you killed with your own hands. You have a dark fate waiting for you in the future, and a destiny you'll battle against, trying to change it. You have so many things that keep you from dying. Don't you? I stayed silent, because I couldn't deny her words. Even if I lied to myself, claiming the engineer wouldn't let me die, I couldn't lie to her, because deep down, somewhere within me, I refused it. I refused to die. Then live, Fry, just as you've always done. Perhaps the future still holds tragedies far darker and crueler than anything you've faced before, but you'll endure, and you'll keep moving forward. Sansa, you'll suffer greatly, Fry, but at the very least, you won't be alone. I'll be with you always. I'll be your strength, and your demon who torments your enemies. The Ultras? Let's kill them all. Let's go to the battlefield and slaughter them one by one. We'll keep moving forward. And if one day you decide you can't go on any longer, then you can reconsider my earlier offer. Dying together in the end wouldn't be so bad. But let's find a beautiful place for that, shall we? I don't want to die in the middle of a battlefield, covered in blood from head to toe. Sansa kept talking without pause, pouring out all her wild thoughts. I suppose, in her own way, she was getting back at me, after I had unloaded all my misery on her these past few days. But hearing her ridiculous talk about suicide now, I found myself laughing unconsciously. The trembling that had overtaken me eased slightly, and for a brief moment, I regained a part of myself that I thought I had lost. You really are a demon, Sansa. Perhaps others saw her as nothing but a filthy creature, spreading death wherever she went. But to me, she was like a sedative, a calming presence that kept me whole through the darkest nights. I was truly grateful to her. Because of her, I could still keep going. It seemed she could see my thoughts clearly, because she smiled at me and nodded. Finally, you should really stop showing me this weak side of yours. Otherwise, you won't like what I'll do next. In response to her playful warning, I could only sigh and smile at her. Yes, my lady. In that moment, I realized how tightly Sansa was holding on to me. Lying side by side, she wrapped me in a firm embrace. You're not running away this time, she whispered, as we slowly drew closer. I won't, I replied softly, as our breaths intertwined one last time before our lips met for the first time. bound together in a long, stolen kiss. Sansa was fierce, as if she had been yearning for this moment for a very, very long time. As if she were trying to draw something out of me. I didn't have the strength to push her away, so I simply let her do as she pleased. And so we kissed passionately, for a long while. A first kiss, then a second, then a third. Come to me. Without even realizing it, Sansa had become something irreplaceable in my life. Chapter 449. The brother I once knew. The hunt, war, death, pain. All of these were things the human empire had begun to experience one after another. From the kidnapping of their most promising talents, to Mikar's disastrous raid, and finally the last battle where Fry and his companions were rescued, or rather, what remained of them, since then. Since the sudden death of the Silver Dragon Guild leader's son, Danzo, 8 full months had passed. Long months filled with skirmishes between the Empire and the Ultras. During this time, the Empire worked on rehabilitating its most prominent warriors, who had been trapped inside the prison cube, hoping to make use of them in the coming war. Under the leadership of Sir Alone, whose battlefield experience was unparalleled, and Aegon Valyrian, who had demonstrated sharp strategic brilliance. The Empire had managed to close its gates throughout those 8 months, withdrawing into itself to repel the Ultras' aggression. Even so, the Ultras never launched a full-scale assault, making the situation increasingly clear. The battlefield for the coming war would not be the Empire, but the cursed land of the Ultras themselves. It took the Empire 8 full months to prepare, and the Ultras had willingly given them that time. As if saying, word for word, take all the time you want. The result will be the same. It was obvious that some hidden conspiracy was at work, and invading the Ultras on their own soil was likely a terrible idea. Sir Alone knew this, of course, but he didn't care. War was inevitable, and this time the Empire would be the challenger. Unlike the war 18 years ago, which they won through the sacrifice of Abraham Starlight, this time history would repeat itself, but on a different battlefield, a cursed land where death had long since claimed dominion. Starlight Estate, Eastern Akla's Mountains. Inside one of the magical forging chambers of the Starlight family, 2 women stood at the edge of the room, watching the mages prepare the long-range teleportation array. 8 months have passed. Ada Starlight spoke with a face that reflected both longing and anticipation. Carmen Starlight, standing beside her, nodded. The War Summit is finally happening. It will be a massive event, gathering all the major powers of the Empire to formally launch the war. The Belgrade Summit. It was an event traditionally held every year to discuss the Empire's state of affairs, attended by the heads of the great families and other notable figures. But this time, the summit had transformed into a war council, where the final touches would be made in preparation for the long-dreaded conflict. They ended up appointing me as the deputy commander of this entire council. Ada sighed in frustration, recalling the moment Sir Alone chose her as second-in-command for the upcoming war. Am I even worthy of such responsibility in the first place? She had wanted to refuse at first, but the decision wasn't hers alone anymore. She now represented an entire family. Her fall would mean their fall. With a gentle smile, Carmen patted Ada's shoulder. I'm sure you'll do well. Sir Alone might seem like a senile old man, but he knows how to judge people and their capabilities. If he placed you in this position, it's because he sees that you're capable of carrying it. Ada Starlight had proven her worth before, when she wisely refused to join Mikar's disastrous raid, making the Starlight family the only one to preserve its full strength. Later, she devised a strategy that convinced the Iron Emperor himself to follow her without hesitation, further proving her competence. I don't see anyone else more deserving of this position, but the real problem lies with the commander you'll be serving under. At the mere mention of him, Ada's face darkened slightly. Aegon Valyrian. It seems the prince has already secured his place on the throne. He even managed to convince his grandfather to give him full command of the coming war. Sir Alone had entrusted the entire command to the younger generation, led by the brilliant Aegon Valyrian. While veterans like Alone and the elders would supervise from afar, they would enter the battlefield only as devastating weapons of mass destruction. Speaking of the prince deepened Ada's frown, but Carmen was there for her. "Don't worry. If anything happens, I'll be right there beside you. Let this old woman be your shield." After months of training, Carmen Starlight had nearly reached her full potential, on the verge of entering the SS rank. Normally, someone like her would have been sent to the battlefield without hesitation. But an exception was made this time, allowing Carmen to stay behind and protect Ada in case anything went wrong. With a faint smile, Carmen remembered the day Ada was appointed as Aegon's deputy commander. It happened 8 months ago, right after the Imperial soldiers trapped in the cube were freed. That was the condition he set for you, wasn't it? Otherwise, he never would have agreed. Ada let out a soft sigh, remembering him. Fry has changed a lot since his friend's death. In the past, he never involved himself in family affairs. Her brother had always struggled, rising and falling again and again. She had often seen him broken, as if he were fighting against the entire world alone. But every time he rose again. And this time was no exception. Yet unlike before, Ada felt something different in her brother, something dark enough to send chills down her spine. He was like a wounded beast, consumed by rage, unable to hide his murderous intent anymore. There was no room for doubt. Fry wanted to fight this time, more than ever before. He wanted to kill, to slaughter the Ultras until their blood flowed like rivers. His achievements were no secret, especially the story they told about him. A tale describing how he defeated an army of 1,000 men. Alone. His burning desire for battle made it clear that Fry would be at the very front of this war. Even if no one ordered him to go, he would march into battle on his own. And there would be no stopping him. He's really going back to that hell he barely escaped from. Most of the elite students would struggle with the idea of returning to the Ultras continent, where they had suffered so much. But Fry was different. He left home 8 months ago, saying he would isolate himself to train, and not to disturb him until the war began. He gave them the coordinates of where he was headed, the Eastern Nightmare Lands. And from that moment on, Fry Starlight disappeared from sight. During his absence, Ada regularly checked his life signal through the device she had planted near his heart, just to make sure he was still out there. And throughout all that time, nothing happened. Fry wandered alone in the Eastern Nightmare Lands. And since then, no monsters had attacked from the east, leaving the borders eerily quiet. He wanted us to call him when the time for war arrived, and now that time has come. That's why Ada and Carmen were in that chamber now. "The warp gate is ready, my lady." One of the mages spoke with deep respect, bowing before Ada. Before them, a bright blue portal glowed intensely, releasing waves of aura so powerful that it was clear the mages had used an immense amount of energy to activate it. "This gate will take you directly to Lord Frey's coordinates. Finding him there shouldn't be difficult for Lady Carmen." Another mage explained, and Ada gave a brief nod. "Let's go." Skipping any further formalities, Ada stepped into the portal, with Carmen following close behind. Despite everything that had happened, Ada couldn't hide her longing to see her troublesome little brother again. It had been 8 months. She wondered if he was still the same as when she last saw him. Was he eating well? Was he sleeping enough? Was he hurt? Was he okay? Had his appearance changed? His birthday had already passed. He was 19 now. Surely, signs of maturity had begun to show on his face by now. Ada wanted to see him. She wanted to see him so badly. And now she was about to fulfill that desire. "Stay close to me once we reach the other side. Don't forget, it's still nightmare territory." "I know." Carmen's warning was valid. Even though the coordinates were precise, there was no guarantee they would land exactly where Fry was. Nightmare creatures could attack at any moment. Carmen was ready to handle whatever might appear before them. "Let's go." And with that, both women stepped through the portal, initiating the teleportation process. As the light engulfed them and the scenery rapidly shifted before their eyes, Ada and Carmen prepared themselves for several possibilities upon arrival. Perhaps they would find Fry right away. Perhaps nightmare creatures would attack them. Or maybe they would simply arrive in an empty, barren place. All were possibilities. But reality told an entirely different story. When Ada stepped out of the portal behind Carmen, the ground beneath her feet was not solid earth, but a thick, viscous liquid that made her instinctively recoil. What hit her nose wasn't the pungent scent often found in the nightmare forests, but something else entirely, something sharp and repulsive, the smell of blood, a lot of it, and the stench of death and rot. Chapter 450. The Return of the Black Death. What entered her field of vision was a scene that could only be described as a nightmare. What am I seeing? Even Carmen was not immune to the shock. In all her long years of life, she had never seen such a massive number of corpses gathered in one place before. The sky was dyed red from the sheer amount of blood spilled here. The blood had formed a giant lake, so vast that both Ada and Carmen found themselves submerged up to their knees. Before them, mountains of corpses were piled one upon another, stacked so high they looked like towering hills. Colossal nightmare creatures, some of them surpassing the SS rank, mist stalker, cursed blades, magma golems, grave birds, all of them were terrifying nightmare creatures that had wrought destruction for countless years. And yet now, so many had been slaughtered that their bodies were no longer even recognizable. Amid this sea of death and blood, the corpses of the nightmare creatures weren't the only ones. Upon closer inspection, the two women noticed other bodies, human bodies. Their heads had been severed and mounted on tall spears, decorating the area like a grim warning. Hundreds of human corpses lay scattered across the land, while the nightmare beasts numbered in the thousands. Whoever killed those men had deliberately displayed their heads this way, to serve as a message for anyone who dared approach. It took Ada and Carmen a long moment to process what they were seeing. In this heart of death, even breathing became a difficult task. The only sound that echoed in this place was the cawing of ravens, feasting on the corpses of the nightmares, enjoying their meal. And just as Ada and Carmen began searching for the one responsible for this massacre, death itself came to greet them. Without warning, Ada collapsed into the blood-soaked ground, while Carmen dropped to her knees, unable to stand. Their faces filled with terror, the two women fell under the crushing weight of an aura that came from nowhere, an overwhelming pressure that made the earth itself tremble beneath their feet. It was so suffocating that Ada nearly lost consciousness, if not for Carmen spreading her own aura, trying to shield her from the worst of it. But even with her efforts, the aura pressing down on them was something neither of them had ever experienced before. In horror, Carmen raised her gaze to the peak of the corpse mountain, the place where the monster behind this aura stood. Just how much power does one need to release such an insane amount of aura? It was a strange aura, yet familiar at the same time. Cold and deadly, yet somehow gentle. Familiar. SS plus rank? No, it's far beyond that. Even Sir alone has never unleashed something like this. At first, Carmen thought it was Fry responsible for this terrifying pressure. But she dismissed the thought immediately. There was no way Frey's strength had reached such a level. I need to get Ada out of here. Even Carmen struggled to stay conscious. Keeping Ada in this place any longer was far too dangerous. Ready to dash away with everything she had, Carmen ignited her 8 stars, casting one last glance at the figure standing atop the corpse mountain. And at that moment, Carmen realized something terrifying. If this person wanted to kill them, they wouldn't survive even a single minute. That sudden realization only deepened her despair and fear. But her fears were misplaced. Without warning, the crushing pressure vanished the moment the young man withdrew his aura, finally allowing them to catch their breath. Sorry, I've been having trouble controlling my aura lately. The voice was familiar. It had been a long time, and his voice was much deeper now. But it was still him. The young man stepped forward, standing atop the mountain of corpses. At last, the figure revealed itself. Holding a pair of black swords, wearing nothing but a torn black pair of pants, barefoot, his chest exposed, with snow-white hair that had grown much longer. He finally appeared before them. With trembling eyes and a face stained by the blood of nightmares, Ada stared at him, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Fry? She called his name, only for her brother to vanish without warning, and reappeared directly before them in an instant. Carmen could only stare at him, unable to track his movement. How could she? He hadn't moved at all. He had simply teleported. He was covered in blood as well, but a faint smile crossed his face when he finally reunited with his one and only sister after all this time. It's been a while, Ada. Fry extended his hand to her, and as Ada looked at that hardened hand, she realized how foolish she had been to come here thinking she'd find the same person she once knew. 8 months might seem short, but it was more than enough to change everything. The young man standing before her was the one the Empire called the second coming of the great Abraham Starlight. The warrior the Ultras feared so much, they named him the Black Death. This was Fry Starlight. Staring at him, Ada hesitated before finally taking his hand, standing up once again, glancing around at the horror surrounding them. Fry, what happened here? Just standing there was suffocating for her. But Fry seemed perfectly at ease, as if he were standing in his own home, not in the middle of a sea of corpses. Staring at the mountains of bodies around him, Fry answered plainly, "This is my hunting ground. I've been hunting nightmare creatures here for the past few months." Hearing this, both Carmen and Ada finally understood why no nightmare beasts had attacked from the eastern borders during all these months. Looking closely at the terrain around them, they could see sword marks and destruction left behind by Fry as he hunted the nightmares. But the nightmare beasts were not the only bodies in this place. What about those human heads? They're Ultras. Fry answered immediately. They showed up here 4 months ago. I think they were planning something, but unfortunately for them, they ran into me. They kept sending more forces, and I kept killing them. It seemed the Ultras had been trying to carry out some kind of operation in the Eastern Nightmare Lands, but their plans had ended in complete failure. Ada understood that much, but she couldn't stop herself from looking at those heads mounted on spears. Heads decorating this canvas of death. Why did you go this far? She asked without thinking. Killing enemies was understandable, but to go so far as to decapitate them and mutilate their bodies, that wasn't something her brother, the one she knew, would do. But Fry showed no reaction, answering calmly as if he had just been asked a foolish question. I did it so my enemies would understand what I'm capable of, and so more of them would come seeking revenge. Revenge? Yes, so I can kill even more of them. Hearing those words, Ada didn't know what to say. By placing the Ultras' heads like this, he had planted fear into his enemies, and at the same time, he had fueled their rage, driving them to seek vengeance. Fry knew well that the high blood of the Ultras were very different from the lower blood. They were much like ordinary humans. They had emotions. They lived normal lives. When their comrades were defiled this way, it was only natural that their anger would explode. And that was exactly what Fry was counting on. This is how he had killed hundreds of them during his time in the Nightmare Lands. After torturing several of them, I learned what they were trying to do recently. Fry spoke with chilling indifference, his gaze fixed on the severed heads he had mounted himself. It seems they're trying to use the nightmare creatures in the coming war by taking control of them. Unfortunately for them, they ran into me here, but they might have succeeded in the southern and northern Nightmare Lands. Fry continued speaking, but soon fell silent when he noticed both Ada and Carmen staring at him in complete silence. What's wrong? Killing? Torture? Somehow, these words had become ordinary to him now. Things he could do without hesitation, as if they meant nothing. You've changed, boy. Carmen finally voiced what was on her mind, wiping some blood from Frey's face. In the past, I could always tell what you were thinking. But when I look at you now, I see nothing. The boy named Fry had become someone entirely different now. No one could predict how far he would go from here on, whether that change was for better or worse. Ada stepped forward, wrapping him in an embrace, uncaring of the filthy blood that stained them both. "I'm glad you're okay, Fry. As long as you're safe, nothing else matters." Whether he was her naive little brother or a merciless monster, Ada Starlight didn't care. That young man would always be her only family. And Fry saw those thoughts clearly through his affection system, which made him hug her tightly in return. "I'm back, Ada." Chapter 451. The Rise of the Black Crown 1. The Belgrade Summit. The summit, once an annual political gathering, had somehow transformed into a war council. A council attended by the Empire's greatest powers, led by the current emperor, Sir Alone Valerian, who had reclaimed the throne after his eldest son, Mikar Valerian, failed so miserably. Mikar himself was absent, but without a doubt, he remained one of the Empire's most powerful assets in the upcoming war. Among those gathered, the royal hall was filled with the leaders of the major families and guilds, as well as the full force of the church who had answered the call. Normally, the church would never attend such events, but Sir Alone had managed to bring them under his authority. Also present were many young faces of the new generation, both graduates of the temple and the very youths who had once been victims of the recent hunt. The Empire had been drowning in unrest and riots for the past several months, fueled by the public's outrage over the royal family's catastrophic failure. Unlike the elite warriors who survived the prison cube, the ordinary soldiers had died in the worst way imaginable. Starved to death during their imprisonment. The death toll had reached thousands. And with the Ultras launching repeated attacks, the citizens were on the verge of collapse. No matter what happened, no matter how the tides of war shifted, they always found themselves the victims. They were the first to suffer, the first to die, as if their lives meant nothing. Cannon fodder. No different from worthless cattle. And now the Iron Emperor was telling them they must fight in the coming war. A war far more brutal and devastating than anything they had faced before. Naturally, it could be said that the people of the Empire were completely against this war. After all, who would be the first to die on the battlefield? Who would be thrown into the front lines? Them, and no one else. Their fury had reached its peak. And so, Crown Prince Aegon proposed broadcasting the Belgrade Summit to the entire empire, claiming he had a plan that could turn the tide. At first, his suggestion was rejected, fearing that the enemy might learn of the meeting's contents. But Sir Alone eventually accepted Aegon's proposal after the prince showed him the full picture. And thus, the long-awaited moment arrived. The moment the war would officially begin. Inside the grand hall of the royal sanctuary, the Empire's great powers sat apart, each group in their own place, their eyes fixed on the stage before them, and the massive screen behind it. The place where everything would soon be revealed. On the side of the Sunlight household, once regarded as the strongest family in the Empire, the young Lord Phoenix sat at the front, claiming his rightful place as the next lord for the world to see. Phoenix was still the same as ever. The brilliant star, the greatest talent of his generation. But the look on his face had changed completely since the events of the Ultras continent. Though many of the elite students had survived, a great number of them had perished. No one blamed Phoenix for it. Novel bin. But that didn't change the fact that they were just children, and Phoenix had been the one responsible for them. He had made most of the decisions in that cursed land. And thus, their lives had rested on his shoulders. What happened in that nightmare cast a long shadow over the young lord of the Sunlight family, especially since among the dead were members of his own family, Scarite Sunlight, Evan Sunlight, the two he had treated like younger brothers. The sons of the current lord, Iris Sunlight, had died because of him, and now their ghosts haunted him still. For the first time, dark shadows appeared beneath Phoenix's blazing eyes, a clear sign of the harsh toll the past months had taken on him. "You look awful, my nephew." From behind Phoenix, a familiar old man appeared, with a burning beard and a warm gaze. He had lost much of his weight after his time trapped in the prison cube, but the current lord of the Sunlight family still burned with his usual fire. Iris Sunlight had finally arrived, taking his place beside his nephew. Behind him stood the strongest warriors of House Sunlight, most notably Phoenix's own father, Gal Varian Sunlight. Although Iris tried to start a conversation with his nephew, Phoenix said nothing. He didn't even look him in the eye. Was it arrogance? Of course not. The truth was simple. Phoenix no longer knew how to face his uncle. Not since his sons had died under Phoenix's command. And Iris, who had lived long enough to witness most of life's hardships, understood it all too well. My nephew, listen to the words of this old man while we still have time before the summit begins. Sitting beside Phoenix, stroking his fiery beard, Iris spoke calmly. You need to understand something, Phoenix. In this life, you cannot save everyone. No matter how strong you become, the idea of a hero who saves everyone is nothing more than a fairy tale for children. Even the great Abraham Starlight lost his life, and his wife's, and the hero before him, Casus Valerian, was no exception either. To give us the peace we enjoyed for so long, he had to sacrifice himself and many other heroes alongside him. Phoenix didn't know how to respond to those words. He had avoided his uncle all this time, unable to face him. But who would have thought that the first words Iris would speak to him were the exact same ones Fry Starlight had told him long ago, back when they were both still trapped in the Ultras continent, and when, except for Ziver, everyone else was still alive. There is no such thing as a hero who saves everyone. Those destined to live will live, and those fated to die will die. I know there's no meaning in the idea of a hero who saves everyone. He had accepted it long ago. But how many lives were in my hands? How many people could have survived if I had made better decisions back then? How many souls might have lived to see tomorrow if I had simply been stronger? The line between life and death was nothing but a series of fragile details. A single right decision, a timely intervention. Sometimes it was even simpler than that. There was no way he could escape the burden of responsibility, especially when the father of those he had failed to save was sitting right beside him. Phoenix, not everything you wish for in life will come true. Iris gently placed his hand on his nephew's head, pulling him into his chest, speaking softly. I've been watching you this whole time. You tried to run from me, but I've been right beside you all along. I saw how you spent these last months training like a madman. I know how much it hurt you. Uncle. As Iris embraced him, Phoenix finally allowed himself to feel weak, releasing all the emotions he had bottled up for so long. It was hard, wasn't it? I know. They were like your brothers. All of you have always been my sons. Though Iris had rarely shown his emotions throughout his life, he had loved his children, even though they resented him, Novelbin. Even though they spent their lives hating Phoenix, believing he had stolen everything from them. The truth was far different. I've seen what you've accomplished. You've mastered the family style, the eternal flame, beyond what I ever dreamed of witnessing. And you've broken through to the SS Plus rank, haven't you? The moment Iris spoke those words, shock filled the entire Sunlight household. And beyond them, anyone who overheard was equally stunned. We have gained another SS Plus warrior. Phoenix had never announced his breakthrough. Until now, only Iris had noticed it. You've raised the name of this family. You are our pride, Phoenix. So hold your head high and always look ahead. Who knows? Maybe one day you'll reach the Elio state, the final stage of the style, one that only the first lord of this family ever achieved. Sitting behind them, Galvarian quietly listened to Iris's words. He had no idea his son had reached SS+, and now he was hearing his brother speak of the Elio state, a combat state spoken of only in legends within the Sunlight family. It was said that whoever attained it would manifest flames as hot as the sun itself. Reaching that state meant the user had officially entered the mythical SSS rank. Gal wondered, did Iris truly believe Phoenix could reach that level? Yes, Phoenix was the greatest of his generation. But the ancient heads of the great families were on an entirely different level. After all, there was a reason no one had reached SSS rank in all these long centuries. In the end, Galvarian thought, perhaps the Elio state would remain lost forever. And there, in that place, Phoenix embraced his uncle, a single tear falling from his eye, mourning the younger brothers he had lost, and all the other students who had died under his command. The past is gone, and it cannot be changed, but the future still lies ahead of us, full of possibilities. What mattered now was the future before them. The future where everyone would have a second chance. As Iris spoke those final words, the hall darkened, and the long-awaited summit finally began, a single spotlight illuminating the platform below. At the same time, a live broadcast began streaming across the entire empire, allowing every citizen to witness what was about to unfold. But the man who stepped onto the stage wasn't Sir alone. It was someone else entirely. Chapter 452. The Rise of the Black Crown, 2. Wearing his royal robes, smiling with that same familiar expression. The first prince, Aegon Valerian, stood proudly at the center. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first military summit in the long history of this empire. The first and final war council against our eternal enemies, the Ultras. Aegon walked across the stage with steady steps, drawing the eyes of the entire world upon him. People of the Empire, the beating heart of this nation, allow me to begin this summit with you, for you are its foundation. It is because of you that this civilization still stands. So please, let the noble lords wait a moment longer. Aegon spoke with skillful charisma, giving priority to the people instead of the elite and noble commanders. It was a smart move. Subtly, he made the entire world witness him valuing the common folk and soldiers above the elites and leaders. Now, my dear citizens, I would like to ask you a simple question, and I hope you will answer me honestly. Tell me, where is the enemy? His question echoed through every corner of the empire. The answer was obvious, and yet the hall fell into complete silence, for no one dared to respond. But this only deepened Aegon's smile, as he raised his hand, causing the massive screen behind him to come to life, displaying the footage he had carefully prepared. In that moment, the screens showed riots and destruction. The chaos caused by the citizens themselves when their anger had consumed them. The footage was extensive, showing the faces of everyone who had committed such acts, with a level of detail so precise it left the world wondering. How did the prince obtain such recordings? My beloved citizens, you are angry, aren't you? And who could blame you? Because of others' mistakes, you have been forced to suffer the horrors of war and death. While most of the great names survived, it was your loved ones, your families, who died on the battlefield. We have lost so much that my heart aches whenever I recall the death toll from the last battle. Those who died were not mere soldiers. They were heroes who gave their lives for their homeland. My words may sound empty to you, but from the bottom of my heart, I apologize to each and every one of you, on behalf of myself and the entire royal family responsible for such a fate. Before the entire world, Aegon Valerian bowed deeply. A sight rarely witnessed from someone standing at the top, bowing before the common people. His gesture didn't ease the people's anger, but somehow, it made them fall in step with his rhythm. And this was exactly what the prince had counted on to deliver the finishing blow he had prepared from the very start. Raising his head slowly, Aegon cleared his throat before shouting once more, louder this time. Soldiers of the Empire, let me ask you again. Where is the enemy? Taking another step forward, he continued his performance. Is it the leaders of the Empire, the ones who sent your loved ones to war? Are they the ones forcing you to fight again, throwing your precious lives away like they mean nothing? To that question, Aegon gave his own answer.
No.
That's not the answer. With a wave of his hand, the footage on the screen shifted entirely, revealing something else, something dark, something that made several people jump from their seats the moment they saw it. What I'm about to show you is the fate that awaits us all if we do not rise and fight against our one true enemy. Forgive me for the filth you are about to witness, but this is necessary so that you may see the dark reality of what lies beyond, on the other side of this world. And at that moment, the truth was revealed, the truth that made Phoenix rise from his seat, his blazing eyes burning with an uncontrollable fury as he glared down at the prince. And how could he not? After what his eyes had just seen, on the massive screen, footage was displayed that silenced the entire world, leaving them staring in rage and disgust at the scenes before them. Meanwhile, Aegon's smile quietly grew wider. The first scene showed the suffering of a particular girl, the saint candidate Emilia Atrax. The video revealed to the entire empire how the Ultras had raped that poor girl, beating her relentlessly, then tearing her body apart and devouring her alive. The footage was so horrifying and real that many turned their eyes away, unable to watch. The footage shifted again, showing the deaths of the other elite students one after another. Jan Dover and Kyle Walker eaten alive. Ziver Adams, killed by the bite of a mutated human. The footage was brutally detailed, perfectly capturing the savagery of the Ultras, filling the citizens of the Empire with unrelenting fury as they watched this tragic display. Seizing that moment of collective outrage, Aegon shouted at the top of his lungs, his eyes turning bloodshot with rage, revealing a wrathful face no one had ever seen before. People of the Empire, where is the enemy? Allow me to answer you. It is right here. The enemy is the one who killed your loved ones and left them to starve to death. The enemy is the one who raided your homes, murdering your husbands and wives, harm to women and children. The enemy is the one who committed all these massacres against those of your own flesh and blood. This vile enemy, who sold their souls to demons, is now preparing to wage war against the empire built by mankind, lived in by mankind, and defended by mankind with their lives. //Anovelbin Aegon's voice thundered, and his emotions reached the hearts of the entire world. He appeared angry, sorrowful, furious, and within mere seconds, Aegon had ignited the hearts of every citizen of the Empire. My brothers and sisters, will you sit idly, refusing to fight, until the day comes when you share the same fate as all those poor souls we've already lost? Will you allow these defilers to take the lands your ancestors died to protect? Of course not. Raising his fist, Aegon roared. And at the same time, the citizens of the Empire roared with him. We will fight for the land our ancestors, our fathers, and our sons died for. We will fight to give the next generation a chance to live, so they won't suffer as we did. We will fight. At last, Aegon fell silent, but in return, the entire empire exploded this time, chanting his words, with a burning fire igniting in their hearts. We will fight. Quietly, Aegon stepped away from the spotlight, leaving those dark images playing before the world. Withdrawing from view, hiding the devilish smile that crept across his face. Inside the royal sanctuary hall, Iris barely managed to hold Phoenix back, who was moments away from leaping toward Aegon. The Lord of House Sunlight burned with rage. How could he not, after seeing those horrific scenes in which his students had died? But the problem wasn't the scenes themselves. The problem was how Aegon had acquired them. To obtain such footage and record it in such detail, one had to be present at the very place where all of it happened. In other words, Aegon had been there, when Emilia was raped, when Ziver died, when the students were massacred. He had been there. And what did he do? Nothing. He did nothing. Simply recorded their final moments, saving them for this very day. As if he had known all along that this was how it would end. Aegon Valyrian. He had presented the Ultras to the world as demonic monsters worthy of death. But the real question was, between him and the Ultras, who was the true monster? The rogue prince had united the entire empire beneath him, crowning himself the supreme commander of the coming war. Only the gods knew what fate awaited the empire, under the leadership of a man whose cruelty surpassed even that of demons themselves. Chapter 453, Vanguard of the Apocalypse, 1. The first phase of the summit concluded when Crown Prince Aegon Valerian succeeded in making the people of the empire follow him blindly. With nothing more than a few well-crafted words and carefully chosen footage that revealed to the entire world the brutality of the faction known as the Ultras. With confident steps, walking like a king among men, Aegon stepped back where the Iron Emperor stood waiting, nodding at his grandson with approval. Well done. Even if I had taken the stage myself, I couldn't have given a better performance. At the honest praise of the Iron Emperor, Aegon gave a faint smile, wearing his usual mask. Your words honor me more than I deserve. No need to pretend to be humble, boy. You were born to rule as a king. So act like one. Sir Alone's words only deepened the smile on Aegon's face. It's time for the second phase. Yes. Working together with the mages responsible for the broadcast. The same broadcast the entire empire had just watched. Aegon Valerian began manipulating the feed. What we've shown the world was only the first part. As for the second part, where we'll discuss the real details of the war, we'll alter the broadcast, feeding the public false information, while the truth stays within the walls of Belgrade's royal hall. Even here, inside the hall, Aegon never intended to reveal everything he had planned. This was the prince's strategy. Deceive the common folk into believing they were so important, that they were treated better. Even better than the nobles and military leaders. But all of it was nothing more than a carefully orchestrated play, staged by the rogue prince. His strategies were undeniably cunning. But Sir Alone, who judged people by their merit and the results they achieved, didn't object in the slightest. As long as the results spoke for themselves, he had no complaints. And this was why the Iron Emperor favored his grandson above all others. He saw in him the signs of greatness, an emperor who would rule the world with an iron fist. Aegon had what it took. And beyond his individual strength, which raised several unanswered questions, he excelled in every other aspect of leadership. After the first presentation ended, both Sir Alone and Aegon stepped forward again, standing before the Empire's great powers. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to begin this summit in earnest. Aegon spoke calmly, leaving the rest to Sir Alone. The projection screens lit up one after another, displaying the military might that Sir Alone and his grandson had prepared over the past several months. After relentless effort, and thanks to Prince Aegon's strategic brilliance, we've gathered an army of 88,000 soldiers, made up of warriors from the great families, major guilds, and even the common folk. Following my grandson's speech, we expect the army size to easily surpass 100,000. Sir Alone pointed to the main force the Empire would use in their large-scale raid against the Ultras. It could be said the Empire had drained much of its wealth to prepare an army of this size, equipped with all manner of weapons and gear, in addition to thousands of magical cannons and hundreds of ships built in record time, all prepared to cross the demonic sea and reach enemy territory. Our first major challenge is the distance our army must cover once the war begins. An army of 100,000 cannot cross the demonic sea all at once. Which brings us to the main point of this meeting. If the army crossed the sea in one massive wave, they risked falling into the same fate as Mikar and his forces, who fell into Beatrice's trap. Therefore, it wasn't realistic to launch a full-scale invasion by sea from the start. Individual strength, huh? Leaning with one hand on his chair, Iris spoke softly, having already guessed what the Iron Emperor was about to say. Individual strength? Phoenix asked, to which Iris responded with a smile. Sir Alone will announce it now. And indeed, the Iron Emperor addressed that very point. We must remind ourselves of something many of you already know. The true deciding factor in war. What will tip the scales in favor of one side over the other is not the size of the armies, nor their numbers, though those things are important, of course. What truly decides a war is the final battle fought by the strongest warriors on both sides. Quality, not quantity. In the end, a single SS plus ranked warrior could destroy an entire army by themselves if needed. What the witch Beatrice had accomplished not long ago was the perfect example. In other words, individual strength will be key in this war. Our armies cannot cross the demonic sea all at once. We need a foothold on the Ultras continent, where we can build a warp gate that will allow our armies to cross safely. Instead of sending their full force across the sea, the Empire would first send a much smaller team, tasked with establishing a foothold within enemy territory. But no matter how you looked at it, it sounded like a suicide mission. It may seem like a suicide mission, but it all depends on the individuals we send on this raid. If an ordinary army were sent, they'd be slaughtered to the last man in no time. But the outcome would be entirely different. If those sent were strong enough to accomplish the mission, the only question was, who would go? The Emperor and his son cannot go this time. They are our main forces in this war. In other words, Sir Alone and Mikar Valerian will only join the battle if the enemy's main forces appear on the battlefield. Iris's remark was right, and Sir Alone's next words confirmed it beyond doubt. For this raid, a special unit will be formed, a vanguard that will take the first step in this war. And leading that vanguard will be the man who once committed an unforgivable crime, sacrificing the lives of many of the Empire's finest talents. Now, he will have to wash away that blood with the blood of our enemies. As Sir Alone's declaration echoed through the hall, the doors swung open, and an old man entered, dragging chains behind him. He wore nothing but tattered clothes that hadn't been changed in years. Though his body still radiated strength, maintained by the Empire itself, preserved at its peak for this very moment. With eyes that showed only white, long gray hair and a scarred face, the former headmaster of the temple knelt before the Iron Emperor. Raphael Bloodmater, you will lead this war's vanguard. You will shield your allies with your body and soul. You will take their blows, fight in their stead, and die for them if necessary. That is your punishment for your sins. Raphael Bloodmater, a veteran SS-ranked warrior, who once fought in the War of Light, now about to wage the War of Darkness. But this time at the very front lines. The first man to stand before the enemy, bearing the brunt of the assault for his kin. It was the price he paid, after being blinded by the visions of the engineer and committing his crimes. Seemed like a dark fate, but Bloodmater welcomed it. He had wagered on this outcome from the start. I will serve this empire until my final breath. The former headmaster spoke calmly, declaring himself the commander of the Special Vanguard. But Bloodmater alone was not enough. Soon after, the rest of the members were announced. From the church's side, their main forces have volunteered for this mission. From the followers of the Lord of Light, Snow Lionheart appeared, holding the sacred sword Vermithor, followed closely by two women, both dressed in pure white from head to toe. Snow Lionheart was still a young man in the prime of his youth, and many were shocked by his willingness to return to the enemy's continent, the place he had barely escaped alive once before. But as the crowned hero, it was only natural for him to stand at the front, as the sword of the Empire. And beyond that, he had debts to settle on the other side of the world. Snow Lionheart's decision to participate revealed an important truth. The crowned hero never walked alone. Wherever the hero went, the saintess must follow. That means, some whispered quietly, and Sir Alone confirmed it aloud. The church's hero, Snow Lionheart, along with Saintess Eurasia, will join the special unit. Sir Alone's announcement stirred great commotion. Setting Snow Lionheart aside, the Saintess was an SS Plus ranked warrior, one of the Empire's most powerful weapons. Her presence on the front lines raised many questions. But no one dared to object, for Snow Lionheart's decisions were considered the will of the Lord of Light himself. Beside Eurasia, another woman, 5 years older than Snow, stood tall. Alongside Saintess Eurasia, The Saintess candidate Uriel Platini will also participate, chosen as the next Saintess to inherit the mantle of her predecessors. The Church had deployed 3 warriors at once, all of them towering names in the Empire. The announcement turned into a showcase of just how formidable this special unit truly was. It would be no exaggeration to say they would shoulder the first phase of the war on their own. Chapter 454. Vanguard of the Apocalypse. 2. After highlighting the side of light, it was time to reveal the darkness. A chill ran through the hall as the lights dimmed, and a certain girl stepped forth from one of the darkest corners. The aura she exuded was unnatural, so dark and foul that many present instinctively rose from their seats, preparing to fight, thinking an enemy had invaded the hall. But Crown Prince Aegon Valyrian raised his hand to calm them, pointing instead toward his only sister, as Sir Alone refused to even look her way. No need to panic, my esteemed guests. What you're looking at now is one of the Empire's strongest weapons in the coming war, and my beloved sister, Princess Sansa Valyrian, wearing her shadow dress, with white hair, dark eyes, and a pair of ivory horns. Sansa, the Demoness, stood before the world, facing them all with her true, dark self. And despite the oppressive aura surrounding her, Sansa remained unfazed, meeting their fearful gazes with a sweet, carefree smile. The truth is no longer a secret. You all know of her demonic nature. After the tragic experiments she was subjected to during her abduction, she ended up like this. But in exchange, she gained immense power. The pressure you're feeling now is but a fragment of that strength. Sansa Valyrian, a full-fledged demoness who had reached SS+ rank. A monster among monsters. Though Aegon introduced her as his sister, the audience couldn't help but stare at the black horns crowning her head, no matter how they looked at her. This was no princess. This was a demon. Sansa Valyrian will fight at the vanguard, serving as a shield that protects the Empire from the Ultra's invasion. Her survival up to this point, and her participation in the war, had been Aegon's plan from the very beginning. Had it been up to Sir Alone, she would have been executed long ago. But the prince had other plans for her, and for that Sansa smiled at him. "Thank you for your kind words, dear brother." She seemed sweet and gentle, but the sharpness in her aura, and the piercing gaze she directed at Aegon, told a far darker story. Despite the pressure and the clear threat in her gaze, Aegon only gave a light chuckle, asserting his dominance. For his sister, the girl who not long ago had been his direct rival for the throne, was now entirely under his control. She was nothing more than a weapon in his hands, a sword he could wield however he pleased. It was a complete victory for the prince. And with Sansa's inclusion, the shape of the special unit became clear. But that wasn't the end. Just as the Empire had its shields, it needed another sword. A sword to stand alongside Snow Lionheart. Another young man, like Raphael Bloodmater, whose past crimes had stained his hands. And though he too was forced to participate, it was exactly what he desired. With a motion of his hand, Sir Alone addressed a matter the Empire had neglected for some time. Thanks to the efforts of Lady Ada Starlight, we recently uncovered a critical truth. Sir Alone casually displayed footage of the Empire's eastern borders, the ones bordering the Nightmare Lands. Those borders had been eerily quiet for some time, raising questions among the strategists. But the information Ada Starlight brought back revealed the truth of what had been happening. It seems the Ultras are attempting to turn the nightmare creatures into part of their forces. At this announcement, most faces in the hall darkened. It wasn't unusual for the Ultras to use nightmare creatures in battle. It had happened before. But this time it was different. The sudden disappearance of nearly all nightmare creatures from the region at once meant this was no ordinary raid. If the Ultras succeeded in fully controlling the nightmare creatures, it would mean they could unleash the Nightmare Lords themselves in the upcoming war. Though it was only a fear without confirmation, the possibility was far from zero. Sir Alone used this revelation to announce the final member of the special unit. The final warrior of this squad is a young man of the new generation. Despite his youth, he has already made a name for himself. A name that strikes fear into the hearts of the Ultras more than any other. The young man they call the Black Reaper, the one who single-handedly killed 1,000 Ultras and fought one of their lords one-on-one. The one who held the Eastern Nightmare lands by himself and slaughtered most of the nightmare creatures alone. Sir Alone continued recounting his feats, and many in the hall had already guessed his identity. The sole wielder of the twin blazing swords, Fry Starlight. Finally, it was time for the world to witness him again. Many in the hall were curious about him. Even his friends were no exception. Fry had vanished since the death of his friend Danzo months ago. It was said that he had gone into seclusion to train, and no one knew what the young man, who had achieved so many feats, had become since then. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he was now the most feared figure among the Ultras, after all the horrors he had unleashed in their lands. The one who fought armies, fought the Empyreans, fought the Lords, and fought the Hollows. He had done it all, and lived to tell the tale. Even Sir Alone himself was curious about him. Fry Starlight has rejected all my summons until now, which makes him the only one I know so little about. There were many unknowns surrounding this young man, and Sir Alone wanted to unravel them at last. This would be their first direct meeting, and without warning, he finally arrived. But before they even saw his face, the entire hall froze, and even the strongest warriors darkened their expressions. From out of nowhere, an overwhelming pressure crushed them all, forcing many to the verge of their knees. The entire hall trembled without warning, and even Sir Alone himself couldn't immediately grasp what was happening. He had expected much from the young man called Fry Starlight, but this far exceeded his wildest expectations. How could it not, when the aura pressing down on him now surpassed his own by far? Holding his ground, Sir Alone cursed under his breath as his body lit up with radiant aura. I'm at the peak of SS Plus rank. Damn it, if his aura exceeds mine, then this can only mean one thing. Sir Alone's expression darkened even further as the realization struck him. Beside him, Aegon Valyrian, for the first time since the summit began, dropped his trademark smile, replacing it with a cold, unflinching scowl. Fry Starlight, if even Sir Alone couldn't measure his strength, then it could only mean one thing. Many thought the same, though few dared to believe it. The mythical rank spoken of only in ancient legends, a power most thought was nothing but a fable, it had returned. From within the portal he took his first steps into their world. Long white hair, black armor, sharp features that reflected an uncommon maturity. A body overflowing with so much power that it rendered the room speechless. This was Fry Starlight, the man who shook the hall with an aura that reached the mythical SSS rank. A power many believed was nothing more than a fairy tale. And after a few moments of suffocating silence, with all eyes fixed solely on him, Fry Starlight finally withdrew his aura and spoke calmly. Forgive me, esteemed gentlemen, I've spent too much time in the Nightmare Lands, and I seem to have forgotten how to live among humans. In the Nightmare Lands, Fry had kept his aura fully unleashed at all times, to assert his dominance over that cursed land. And now, upon his return, he often forgot to restrain himself, especially now, after he had fully mastered the third stage of shadow adaptation, granting him complete control over his aura. Because of this, many mistook his aura for something far beyond their understanding, something otherworldly. But that didn't change one undeniable truth. The Fry Starlight standing before them now was one of the strongest warriors on the entire planet called Earth. Chapter 455, The Rise of the Vanguard. Fry Starlight's POV. It had been a long time since I last stood before such a large crowd. Standing there, face to face with the Iron Emperor, Sir Alone, for the very first time. I withdrew my explosive aura, offering hollow words of apology that meant little to me, and even less to those present, whose eyes refused to accept what they were seeing. Their reactions drew a tired sigh from my lips. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had expected. Ever since I gained full control over my aura, I'd become capable of pulling off stunts like this. So, you say you've forgotten how to live among humans. What an interesting thing to hear from your mouth, Fry Starlight. Taking a few steps toward me, Sir Alone unleashed his full aura and power, trying to reassert his dominance. The force he released made the very air tremble. It was truly formidable, but compared to what I had displayed earlier, felt lukewarm at best. When he saw me unaffected by his power, a wide smile spread across Sir Alone's face. I wonder how far your strength has grown, Lord Starlight, for you to stand so calmly before me like this. Standing face to face, the tension rose as sparks of radiant light shot from his eyes, colliding with the violet sparks flaring from my own. If you wish to know what I'm capable of, then send me to the battlefield and watch from afar. Watch as I slaughter our enemies, one by one. At those words, Sir Alone raised an eyebrow. What a bloodlust you have, Fry Starlight. I've heard that in the past few months, your hands have been stained with so much blood, that I can't help but be concerned about sending you to the front lines in this state. Sir Alone was trying to size me up in every way, since this was our first direct encounter. To him, I must have looked like a monstrous force in the prime of its youth, with unknown abilities and even more unknown motives. There's no need to overthink it, Iron Emperor. You, more than anyone, know that you need people like me. Your eldest son once used my father to end the last war. Now all you need to do is the same. That's why people like us exist. Murgo once said the same thing to me, back when I fought him in the land of the Ultras. We are monsters, born for this purpose alone. With a smile, Sir Alone nodded. True enough. As he looked at me, Sir Alone recalled the legends he had once heard about my father, Abraham Starlight. Unfortunately, I never had the chance to meet your father, but I've heard much about him, and I suppose a part of him lives on in you, his only son. Placing a hand on my shoulder, Sir Alone gave his final words before stepping back. You'll have your chance to spill the blood you crave, but always remember this, Fry Starlight. Don't let that blood consume you, and don't lose yourself. Even monsters have their limits. With a simple nod, I agreed to his words. Though they meant little to me, it seemed Sir Alone had already realized the truth, that only my aura had reached the mythical SSS rank. And because of that, he had instinctively lowered his guard. Sharp senses indeed. I'll give him that. He figured out my true level faster than I expected. As these thoughts crossed my mind, I glanced at my system interface to check my stats. Hostname, Fry Starlight, Dual Soul. Class, Swordsman. Talent, SS+. Current rank, S. Strength, S. Speed, S+. Agility, S+. Endurance, SS. Aura, SSS. Magic. Swordsmanship level 7, max level. Talents. Swordsmanship, aura manipulation, poison resistance. Combat style, 10,000 steps of shadow. Skills. Hawk eyes, rank A. Phantom steps, rank A. Seduction, rank D. Ascension, rank S. Ignition, rank SS. Screenshot, rank SS. Abilities. Shadow Adaptation 3-7. Stage 1. Adapt to all combat styles, creating natural counters against any fighting technique. Stage 2. Adapt to all physical injuries, triggering rapid regeneration to heal the body automatically. Stage 3. Adapt to all forms of aura, granting perfect control and absolute dominance over the surrounding aura and the user's own. Anti-magic level 2. Current achievement points 1,000. I had truly come a long way. After spending all my achievement points to raise my talent to SS Plus and training relentlessly for 8 long months, I finally broke through to S rank. I even mastered the 3rd stage of shadow adaptation, granting me absolute control over my aura. All of this, combined with the secret training techniques I discovered within Nameless Mask. My strength had grown immensely. At my current level, I felt confident that I could stand against any SS Plus opponent. Even Sir Alone himself, if it came to that. But despite how far I'd come, I was still not where I wanted to be. Still far from the level I needed to reach. The level where I could face all those entities who had marked me, those who sought to bend my fate to their will. In this world, power is everything. The strong live by their own rules, and the weak, they have no choice but to crawl through life as slaves, bound by the whims of others. That's why I yearned for bloodshed, why I wanted to fight again, to force myself to ascend higher, through blood and fire, through battles where life and death balanced on a knife's edge. That's why I was here, to slaughter as many of those bastards on the other side of the world as I could. Now, standing here in the hall that hosted the World Summit before the war's official outbreak, I took a seat among the special squad I was now a part of, silently withdrawing from the spotlight after causing a stir. Taking my place, I found familiar faces all around me. Most notable among them was Snow Lionheart, seated to my right. "It's been a while, brother. You've changed a lot." Just from the look on his face, I could tell. Snow was genuinely happy to see me again. I'm not the only one who's changed. I assume I wasn't the only one training. Though he hadn't released the same overwhelming aura I did. Snow had grown tremendously since I last saw him. I figured he had fully mastered his War King form by now. He had grown far stronger than the story's timeline should have allowed. But I was glad. Glad to see he had found his own path forward. Just like I had my reasons for returning to that cursed continent, he had his own. Without a word, we clasped hands, our grip firm. "I'm relying on you there." Same here. Chapter 456. Fate carved in black steel. We'd fought side by side for so long that standing shoulder to shoulder on the battlefield now felt like second nature. Don't go getting lost in your little world. You're not the only elite students heading back to that continent, you know. This'll be my third time there, for your information. With a playful smile, Sansa wedged herself into the conversation, clinging tightly to my left shoulder. She was seated on my left, of course. Snow Lionheart fell silent. I saw him try to speak, but his words died the moment his eyes caught sight of the dark horns crowning Sansa's head. Among all those present, I was probably the only one who treated her like a normal person. "You could have stayed home if returning to that continent scared you so much." I threw a teasing remark her way, and as if she had been expecting it, she answered without missing a beat. "Home is wherever you are, Fry. You really are carefree, aren't you?" To say something like that without a hint of hesitation. Sansa had changed too. She no longer bothered hiding her overflowing feelings for me. Frankly, what was between us wasn't much of a secret anymore. She didn't mind clinging to me in front of others, and by now, they had likely pieced together that something was going on between us. And honestly, they wouldn't be wrong. Even when I was training in the Nightmare Lands, she visited me often. I didn't mind her presence. I still wasn't sure how I felt about Sansa, but her presence was comforting, like a quiet lullaby before sleep. Having her in my life was something I had grown fond of, so I didn't bother pushing her away. But of course, not everyone approved. "Would you mind stepping back, demon? You're tainting him with your filth." The one who spoke those venomous words was none other than Uriel Platini. And honestly, I was surprised to hear someone known as the sweetest girl in the world speak with such hostility. "Uriel." I spoke her name instinctively, but she paid me no attention. Her eyes were locked entirely on Sansa, and yet Sansa didn't flinch. She simply smiled and clung tighter to my shoulder, meeting that hatred head-on. "Why should I step back? Don't you see? Darkness suits him perfectly. I don't know where you found the audacity to show yourself before the world in that cursed form of yours. But don't misunderstand. You are no longer Princess Sansa Valyrian. That girl died a long time ago. What you are now is nothing but a cursed demon. A filthy weapon kept alive only because it's useful. And when you're no longer useful, your only home will be the grave. That's enough, Uriel. You've gone too far. It was Snow who intervened, cutting her off, while Sansa simply rested her head against my shoulder with a quiet shake of her head. I won't argue with what you've said, because, for the most part, it's true. But I don't mind, as you can see. Unlike you, Saint Candidate, I found my place in this life, so get used to my face. You'll be seeing it quite often from now on. There were countless implications hidden within Sansa's words. On the surface, it simply meant that we would be seeing each other frequently, given that we were assigned to the same combat squad. But for some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that she meant something entirely different. Back to Uriel. I had almost forgotten just how deeply she despised demons, and how fiercely the church condemned them. The pure-hearted Uriel, as usual, couldn't hide her blatant hostility. I saw the same cold resentment in Saintess Yuasha, who sat quietly beside her, casting a subtle glare at the princess. Those sacred auras collided with the dark one surrounding Sansa. Chaos swept through the squad before it had even been officially formed. Trying to diffuse the tension, Snow turned back to me, asking about our third comrade. What about Ghost? He must have heard about it already. He'll be joining us later. He'll be the squad's assassin. It was only natural. Ghost's participation had been decided from the very start. He would follow me wherever I went. And so, the shape of our squad finally came together. I saw it reflected in Bloodmater's eyes, the man who had remained silent until now, seated beside Yuasha. It seemed he hadn't expected that, aside from Yuasha, every single fighter in this squad were students from his very own temple. We had changed a great deal from the days when he still stood beside us, yet in the end we were still the same elite disciples he once knew. It must have meant something to him. Bloodmater, the tank, Snow and I, the main duelists, Yuasha and Uriel, the healers, Sansa Valyrian, the wave controller capable of taking on the role of a tank as well, and Ghost Umbra, the assassin. There were many vacant roles, but we had the minimum required to be considered a complete combat unit. With this much fighting strength, we could handle any battlefield situation that came our way. As we sat together in our designated corner, the Prince and the Iron Emperor continued their summit. Our squad would lead a force of 10,000 men. Out of the Empire's total army of 100,000. 10,000, it seemed, was the limit for those chosen to cross the demonic sea. Our mission was to carve a path to the other side, and establish a foothold for the Empire beyond the sea. The support will always be ready, and figures like Sir Alan and Mikar Valyrian would make their move the moment the enemy's main forces appeared. Could be said that the demoness ranked 17th, Beatrice, a fearsome witch of terrifying power, and the human demon, Dragoth. Those two were the great monsters Sir Alan and Mikar Valyrian had been saving their strength to face. But beyond Beatrice and Dragoth, there were still the Four Lords, the Empyreans, the Hollows, and countless others. There were far too many variables in this war. The prince addressed most of them as he laid out his plans and vision for the battles to come. But despite all the details they accounted for, I couldn't help but wonder, were they truly prepared? I watched them speak with passion, claiming they had calculated every risk, every scenario. And yet, none of them dared to mention the dreadful truth the Prince, Phoenix, and Ghost had uncovered. The gates that once sealed this world were no longer closed. No longer was there a barrier separating us from the beings above. The final enemy in this war could change at any moment. It could very well be a being no human could ever dream of facing, especially if one of the 10 upper seats appeared. That was why I couldn't place my trust in the Empire. Meeting Sansa's keen gaze, I reaffirmed the decision I had made long ago. The only thing I could truly rely on were the black swords in my hands. The blades that had cut down my foes and enemies. I needed to become stronger. Faster than ever before. Strong enough to face whatever future this world had in store. And it would all begin with this squad, the first to plunge into the fires of war. Seated beside Snow, I set my eyes on the future. Snow, my friend, my brother. This life has never been fair. Fate's currents have played cruelly with us, time and time again. Now we stood on the battlefield, facing each other. On one side, Snow held the Vermithor, his body shining with a brilliant light that pierced the darkness of night. On the other side stood I, his opponent. Clad in my black armor, wearing the nameless mask, I gazed at him one final time before unsheathing my twin swords, ready to fight. Ah, Snow, my old friend. I still remember the day the Empire formed that special squad. The one that brought us together. I remember how you and I fought side by side in the War of Darkness. A war that ended years ago but left behind scars that still haunt us. I should have realized back then that the choices we made were the very ones that led us to this moment. If I could turn back time, perhaps I would have made different choices. Perhaps I wouldn't have had to kill you with my own hands, my dear brother. Chapter 457. The Promise. 1. Fry Starlight's POV. Since the official introduction of the special unit that would lead the vanguard of the war, the summit proceeded smoothly as Prince Aegon Valyrian laid out the various aspects of the coming conflict. There was much to discuss, ranging from the military forces contributed by the great houses to the financial and logistical support required for such a massive campaign. Funding an army of that size was no easy feat, especially when the prince announced that every soldier would be equipped with at least Class B gear. Granting ordinary soldiers such high-quality equipment was essential for Aegon's strategy to win the complete support of the Empire's populace. But at the same time, this placed an enormous burden on the great houses, forcing them to supply weapons and armor for an army 100,000 strong. Could be said that the coming war would drain the Empire dry. Sir alone truly intended to throw everything they had into this conflict and end the war against the Ultras once and for all. At some point, I lost all interest in the meeting. None of what they were discussing really concerned me. As if she had been waiting for this exact moment, Sansa leaned in and whispered in my ear, noticing where my thoughts had drifted. "Hey, what do you say we sneak out of this boring place? This is the first time I've heard my idiot brother talk for this long. It's actually making me nauseous." She wasn't wrong. Aegon had been speaking endlessly, going over every aspect of the war with meticulous detail. When it came to strategy and manipulation, I believed that Prince was no less than Beatrice in any way. As long as he was leading, that Villainous would face hell against him. From a tactical standpoint, it was a perfectly balanced match, regardless of their combat abilities. Back to Sansa. She truly did whatever she wanted, without caring about anything around her. "I don't mind, but where exactly are we going?" I had spent most of my recent days in the Nightmare Lands, so my sense of what normal people did in situations like this was long gone. You could say I was craving to return to the battlefield. But Sansa had something else entirely in mind. "Let's roam around the capital. It's been a long time since I was allowed to go out and walk freely." What she wanted could very well be considered a date. I might have thought of it differently if the princess was still the same person she used to be. But with the way she was now, there was no room for doubt about what she meant. "Are you planning to walk among the people with those horns of yours showing?" I didn't mind her current appearance, but I was certain she'd attract attention wherever she went. That's why she had been banned from wandering among the populace ever since her return from the Ultras continent. Since then, she only moved through the shadows, hiding herself in the darkness of her own power. "The world has already seen me. There's nothing left to hide now." And it was true. Her new form had already been broadcast across the entire empire. "You're rushing things. Sure, they know about you now. But that doesn't mean they've accepted you." There was a huge difference between awareness and acceptance. But it seemed Sansa understood that already. Like I said, she did what she pleased. I figured she had been waiting for the right opportunity to drag me along on this outing she had been looking forward to. For a moment, I thought, maybe I should just go with her. Lately, all I'd been thinking about was war and how I needed to grow stronger as fast as possible. But just as I was about to answer her, a third voice interrupted. Someone who had remained silent until now. "You've all changed so much." It was Bloodmater, whose eyes hadn't left our faces since this special unit was formed. The temple students used to be nothing more than children, unaware of the true nature of the world they lived in, lulled into a false sense of peace, deceived by others into believing they were safe. But when I look at your faces now, I can't help but wonder, are these really the faces of people about to march into war? Everyone standing before him was a student of the very temple he had led for so many years, and yet their faces showed a strange indifference, as if what they were heading into wasn't a war, but a vacation to some faraway land. Maybe it was naivety, or perhaps arrogance. But Bloodmater realized that wasn't the truth. These students were no longer just students, they had become warriors. True warriors who had fought countless battles of life and death. Warriors who had been tempered by hardship to the point where most of them possessed the strength to not only fight him evenly, but even defeat him. Watching these once raw gems, these young talents he had observed for so long, finally reach their potential, Bloodmater felt a small measure of relief in his tired heart. Relief and redemption. That he had not been wrong when he made his decision back then, when he caused the deaths of hundreds of students. Deep down, the former headmaster of the temple believed it had been the right choice. And perhaps what he saw before him now was proof enough. But he was wrong. It seems you're misunderstanding something here, Raphael Bloodmater. What you see before you now is not your doing. To correct the old man's misconception, I spoke up. What we are now is the result of our own choices, of the trials we faced on our own. What you did was nothing more than a small spark in the inferno of horrors we've endured since then. Honestly, how could what happened during the temple raid even compare to the deadly hunt we survived on the Ultras continent? You may think you contributed to who we are now. You might be trying to console yourself with that thought. But what you're doing is nothing but hypocrisy. In the end, you chose to believe what you wanted to believe, and blindly followed the visions that Blue Eyes Man showed you. The moment I mentioned the engineer, I saw Bloodmater's expression twist upside down. I had struck a sensitive chord. The one thing only he was supposed to know. He was the only one who understood what I meant. The others simply stood there, confused by my words, struggling to grasp what I was talking about. You're truly arrogant, Bloodmater, to think you can change the future so easily. With a sarcastic smile, I sighed at the thought. How much do you know? He asked, unable to understand how the young man before him possessed such deep foreknowledge of his actions. At the very least, I know more than you do. Change the future? Defy destiny? Ask me about those things. I've spent most of my life here fighting against them, struggling to swim against the current. The future foreseen by someone like the engineer couldn't be changed that easily. To defeat a world-breaking power like his foresight, you needed a force equal to, or even stronger than it, capable of reversing the future he had seen. This was a truth I had painfully come to understand recently, after endless suffering. That's why the former head of the temple was nothing but a fool. Arrogant enough to think that something trivial like launching a mere raid could change the tragic future the engineer had shown him. Who knows, Bloodmater, maybe what you've done with your own hands is the spark. The very first spark that will ignite the disastrous future you're so desperate to avoid. Unless the engineer had tampered with the vision he showed him on purpose, just as he had done with my sister Ada, that vision would inevitably come true. People like Bloodmater lacked what it took to reverse a future like that. Chapter 458. The Promise, 2. In that moment, Bloodmater remembered what the engineer had shown him, that dreadful future where flames devoured the world. Rivers flowed with blood, and people died without rhyme or reason. To avoid such a fate, Bloodmater had done everything he could to escape what he saw. But all his efforts were in vain. When everything he had lived for was denied, when his noble cause died before his very eyes, I saw Bloodmater falter, unable to accept it. He stood abruptly, slamming his hand on the table, about to speak. But his voice vanished completely as the hall erupted in thunderous applause. The summit had finally concluded, and Aegon had finished presenting his plan. It seemed his strategies had been so brilliant that they made the royal hall explode with excitement. Sadly, we didn't hear a single word of his speech. Practically speaking, we missed the summit despite being there the whole time. This is truly hilarious. Sansa chuckled under her breath after witnessing the final exchange. The timing was just too perfect. I suppose this marks the end of our delightful gathering. We all stood, bringing the summit to a close. I turned my back on Bloodmater, who clearly had so much more he wanted to say. Unfortunately, I had no time to further emphasize his ignorance. He would have to face his own future alone, just like the rest of us. I was about to leave, but stopped when I saw a familiar face making his way toward us, deliberately radiating his blazing aura and drawing everyone's attention. That pressure. He had already reached the SS Plus rank. Forgive my intrusion. Though the summit has ended, I have something to say before everyone leaves. With steady steps and eyes fixed on Sir Alone, Phoenix Sunlight stepped forward, addressing the entire hall. It's fair to say most of those present were surprised to see that he had already reached the SS Plus rank at his young age. You could say he was the fastest to achieve it since Abraham Starlight. Lord Sunlight, is there a reason behind your dramatic entrance? Sir Alone smiled, seeing another powerful individual emerge before him. Phoenix gave a slight nod. I would like to join Bloodmater's vanguard squad. What Phoenix asked for caught most of the audience off guard. Here he was, another survivor of the pursuit, willingly volunteering to return to that cursed continent where he had suffered so much, of his own free will. May I ask why? Sir Alone inquired as Phoenix turned toward us. The infamous squad, the suicide unit that would lead the war. No matter how I look at them, those warriors standing there in the corner of this hall, they are not monsters. They are not a suicide squad. They are my students. Even though they graduated early from the temple, I am still their teacher. Do you expect me to stand by and watch them march to war while I simply stay behind? That went against Phoenix's very beliefs. In the end, like me, like Snow, he too had his own reason to return. Do you truly wish to return to that hell? For a reason like this? To that question, Phoenix had only one answer. Yes, and besides, I have a debt to repay. Many of his students had died during the hunt. Those deaths cast a long shadow over Phoenix Sunlight, and he did not want history to repeat itself. That was why he showed his willingness to return to that continent once more. Back to the place where it had all begun. Phoenix's sudden volunteerism made many wonder just how many suicidal madmen existed in this world. Until now, the war's vanguard looked like nothing more than a suicide squad, one that many believed was filled with war criminals sentenced to death. But now, people began to question whether this was truly just a suicide squad. With Phoenix having broken into the SS Plus rank, and with all the other powerful individuals joining the squad, perhaps this was the strongest force the Empire had assembled since ancient times. A force that might very well become the decisive factor in the coming war. Sir Alone approved of Phoenix's stance. When the Lord of the Sunlight family turned around, what he saw were the warm smiles of his students, those who had fought by his side until now. We'll be in your care again, Professor Phoenix. It was Snow who greeted him first, and Phoenix smiled without realizing it. With how insanely fast you've all been growing, I'll be the one under your care soon enough, says the man who just broke into the SS Plus rank. What growth are you even talking about? Aren't you the prodigy of our era? Snow wasn't wrong. Iris Sunlight had lived far longer, yet never managed to break past SS rank no matter how hard he tried. And now Phoenix had accomplished what Iris couldn't. At only 25 years old, Phoenix's addition was more than welcome. Standing off to the side, I watched as they gathered together. These were the people I would be fighting alongside from now on. And as I stood there, quietly observing them, I couldn't help but wonder, what does the future hold for us? Who will survive? Who will die? I had trained like a madman over the past few months, trying to grow stronger, desperately hoping to avoid repeating what had happened with Danzo. But I already knew, no matter how strong you became in this vast universe, there would always be someone stronger. In the end, all I could do was hope that the power I carried under my belt was enough. Among our so-called suicide squad, there was one member who had been on my mind for a while now. And it was that very member who walked up to me alone, as we both stood apart from the others. For once, Sansa had left my side, allowing Uriel to finally approach me. "Hello, Fry." Despite everything that had happened before, this was the first real conversation we'd had in a long time. I suppose that was what prompted her to greet me. "It's been a while, Uriel." Still as radiant as ever. I'd be lying if I said I hadn't been thinking about Uriel just a few minutes ago. For the first time, the girl standing before me would be fighting by my side on the battlefield. She was one of the main heroines I had once written about, naturally with enormous potential. But among those gathered here, she was the weakest link. I couldn't help but think about it, even though she would be stationed in the rear most of the time, where she'd be relatively safe. But on the battlefield, you never knew what could happen. With a gentle smile and her hands folded in front of her, Uriel had already guessed what I was thinking. "Your eyes say it all, Fry. You see me as the weak link, don't you?" With a hollow smile, I didn't try to deny it. "I wouldn't say you're the weak link, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't worried about you." "So, you were thinking about me." She stepped closer, raising her head so that our eyes met. "As the next Saintess, I am bound to follow the hero wherever he goes. That has been my destiny since the day I was born." Destiny, huh? Chapter 459. The Promise, 3. To live your entire life following a fate written for you by someone else. I was familiar with the idea, and I hated it more than anything. "Is this destiny something the Lord of Light set for you?" "That's right." Uriel nodded. In that moment, I began to realize I wasn't the only one whose fate was manipulated by the beings above. In truth, it wasn't just Uriel. Even Snow, and most of the church who followed the Lord of Light. The ultras who followed the whims of demons. The engineer who played with me and so many others. When I thought about it like that, we were no different from chess pieces on a massive board, moved however those players above wanted. Thinking about it that way, I couldn't help but feel suffocated. This life was like a glass cage, trapping us all inside. And Uriel was one of its prisoners. "I can see you hate it." "Of course I do. That so-called destiny you follow blindly may very well lead you to your grave." And now here she was, about to march with us at the front lines of the war. It was a death sentence written across the sky. And all because she was chosen by that wretched being, the so-called Lord of Light, revered and worshipped here as a god. Uriel didn't deserve such a fate. Not by any means. "Tell me." Without warning, Uriel grabbed my hand and asked, "Would you be sad if I died, Fry?" Her question was strange, childish, and cursed to the point that I felt as if it might really happen. "Yes, I might even cry for you, if it ever came to that." "Really? I didn't expect you to go that far for me." Uriel smiled, wearing that polite, practiced smile she showed most people. But for some reason, I saw something different in her eyes. "Do you remember, Fry, the promise you made to me that day?" She spoke of the countless times she had saved me before, pulling my ass out of life-or-death situations more times than I could count. "I remember. I promised I'd do anything you asked, no matter what it was." "I see. So you were serious about that." For a few seconds, silence fell between us as she tightened her grip on my hand. Something was weighing on her mind. She wasn't acting like herself. She wanted to say something, but she hesitated. And so, I gave her that final push she needed. Gripping her hand, I stepped closer, making the moment between us look awkward to anyone watching from afar. "Even if your God leads you down a path to your death, know this. I won't let it happen. Wherever you are in this world, I'll rush to you. I'll find you, and I'll fight the entire world if I have to. So don't hesitate. Speak your wish and I'll grant it. No matter what it is." For a moment, Uriel was surprised, showing an expression she rarely revealed to anyone. Then she laughed softly. "You've become quite the smooth talker, Fry. You've really grown during the time we've been apart." Lowering her head, she could no longer meet my eyes, Not when we were standing this close. You've become a wonderful man. Her last words came out faintly, followed directly by her request, giving me no chance to respond. Instead, I found myself facing a request I never expected from her. Fry, just once, for once in my life, I want you to come for me. When the time comes, I want you to save me, just once. I know I sound selfish right now, but please promise me. Promise me, Fry. Promise me you'll come for me. Finally, Uriel voiced her request. After saving me so many times without ever asking for anything in return, now was the time for me to be the one to save her. But this request, it wasn't something I had ever expected from her. And for some reason, it didn't feel like she was talking about the Ultras or the coming war. She wanted me to save her, but from what? I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was right to promise her. To make a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. But this was Uriel. Someone I was willing to go to any lengths for. I promise. I'll be there for you. Not just once, but as many times as it takes. So it's okay to be a little selfish. She deserved that much. Even if she asked for the craziest, most impossible thing, I would never call her selfish. After hearing the answer she longed for, I saw happiness light up her face, if only for a moment, as she held on to me without even realizing it. Fry! With a look full of emotion I couldn't quite define, she stared at me, tightening her grip on my hand. But then, in that moment, something strange happened. Something only Uriel experienced. Inside the royal hall where the Belgrade summit was held, Fry and Uriel stood, holding each other's hands. They were so close they seemed like they were about to embrace. Uriel was truly happy in that moment. He had just spoken the words she had longed to hear. But in that moment of pure emotion, where her affection had grown stronger, raising her affection points higher than ever, something strange happened. From between their clasped hands, a violet spark suddenly burst forth. It passed through Fry and struck the Saintess candidate, sending a wave of nausea through her that made her stumble. Fry immediately caught her before she fell. Uriel couldn't understand what she was seeing. The Fry standing before her was still the same, his white hair now grown longer, and the maturing features that had begun to take shape on his face. And that mysterious aura around him, it was alluring to her. That was what she saw for a fleeting moment. But in the next moment, reality flipped upside down, and the scene before her changed completely. Now, she stood in the midst of blazing flames and scattered corpses. She was still there. With Fry, the place was terrifying. Destruction was the only word to describe it. In the heart of death and despair, Uriel saw countless dead faces strewn across the battlefield. But one particular corpse caught her attention, and what she saw froze her in terror. The dead girl lying there was herself. Uriel's body, slaughtered in the most brutal way. Backing away in fear, she tried to run, clinging to her only hope in that nightmare. Fry! She grabbed his hand once more. But it wasn't the warm hand from before. It was cold. Cold, lifeless, and cruel. A hand stained with blood. When she raised her eyes to him, she realized her mistake. This wasn't the Fry she knew. Wearing a strange black mask and clad in a jet-black armor, holding a sword unlike anything she had ever seen, Fry was drenched in blood, her blood, and the blood of all the dead surrounding them. "It's all right, Uriel," he spoke calmly, coldly, in a voice she had never heard from him before. "This is just a nightmare." With a single touch, he brought her back to reality. Just a bad dream. As his words echoed in her ears, Uriel found herself back in the royal hall, staring at the Fry she loved. But in his dark eyes, she saw his shadow, and instinctively, she took a step back, gripped by a feeling she never thought she would have for him. Fear. Chapter 460. The Edge of War. The Belgrade summit had come to an end, and the final touches had already been made. At this point, It could be said that Fry and his companions were standing at the edge of the point of no return. Toward the close of the summit, a strange moment unfolded between Uriel Platini and Fry Starlight. The Saintess candidate appeared to open her heart to him, making a mysterious and personal request. She wanted him to save her. But from what exactly? Fry didn't know the answer. Even so, he promised to grant her wish, adding yet another burden to the many he already carried. Not that it bothered Lord Starlight much. Those shoulders of his had long grown used to such weight. Their conversation had been smooth, but what followed at the end was undeniably odd. Without warning, Uriel suddenly stepped away, her hands trembling without her even realizing it. Under Frey's confused gaze, she struggled to find the words. What did I just see? Was it a vision? A hallucination? Or, as that masked figure had said, a nightmare? It had come the moment she touched Fry. Something had clearly triggered between them, and the experience felt far too real, like something she had actually lived through. That masked man, was it truly Fry? Could it be what he might become? Uriel questioned the future of the boy standing before her, but she quickly rejected the thought. That couldn't have been Fry. It's impossible. She tried to convince herself. Just as Fry approached her once again. Are you all right? Her reaction earlier had left him full of questions. He stepped closer and reached out his hand. A simple gesture, meant with only good intentions. Uriel knew that, but she couldn't help but recoil from that hand. The same one where she had seen his shadow, the shadow of a blood-soaked monster. I'm sorry, she apologized, though Fry had no idea why. It's fine, he replied gently, then instinctively activated the affection system to read her thoughts, only to be met with confusion and fear. What exactly had happened? He didn't get the chance to find out because, as expected, they were interrupted. Sansa had arrived. Well, Uriel Platini, she said with a teasing smile. I thought you knew how to seize an opportunity when I saw you alone with him. But look at you now, throwing it all away. She chuckled and casually took her place at Frey's side. She had been watching from the beginning, choosing not to step in, as though she had known this would happen. See you later, Fry. Uriel didn't bother responding. Even though she hated leaving things like this with Fry, walking away now was the best decision she could make, at least until she could process what she had seen. What happened to her? Fry asked, turning toward Sansa. She simply couldn't handle your darkness. Handle what? Fry didn't understand what she meant, what he didn't know. Was that Sansa, too, had seen a different side of him for a brief moment. She had seen that same masked monster, wreathed in flames. But unlike Uriel, it didn't shake her. Even if you turn into a beast who lives off the blood of your victims, nothing will change. Where Uriel was pure and gentle, Sansa was the opposite. A creature who carried enough darkness inside her to walk that path alongside him, all the way to the end. Forget it. Let's just get out of here. And with that, she pulled him along. Fry left the royal hall behind, and the curtain fell on the summit for good. Fry Starlight's POV. Time passed quickly after the summit ended. I spent the past few days split between intense training and occasional moments with my sister Ada, or with Sansa, whose face I'd been seeing more and more lately. In the last few days, the first fleet set to cross the demonic sea toward enemy territory had officially been formed. For the past few months, scattered skirmishes had erupted between the Empire and the Ultras, but the battle about to begin now was something entirely different. 10,000 warriors from the great noble families, the Empire's finest fighters, led by the Suicide Squad I was now a part of. Our departure point had been set, the western port of Winterfell. It was there that I saw my sister Ada rushing around in every direction. Although Aegon held the title of Supreme Commander of the War Council, it was Ada who had taken on most of the work as his deputy, preparing the army, managing its structure and logistics. All of it had fallen to her, and this was exactly where she shined. In record time, Ada had managed to organize an army of 10,000 soldiers, perfectly without a single mistake. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail as she moved tirelessly from one facility to the next, checking on various units without rest, while I followed behind her alongside Carmen. Carmen had been glued to her side around the clock, at my request. As for me, I only stopped by from time to time. But when I saw my sister shouting in the face of a man over 2 meters tall, built like a tank, and radiating S-rank aura pressure, I finally understood why Sir Alone had appointed her as the Supreme Commander's deputy. Despite the fact that man was a veteran warrior and one of the noble family leaders, he did nothing but bow his head to Ada, apologizing for his mistakes. And in his eyes, I saw genuine respect. It was the same respect I saw from most of the soldiers gathered here at the Winterfell harbor. She's truly incredible. Standing beside Carmen, the two of us watched her from afar as she worked. Carmen, who had observed my sister longer than I had already come to appreciate her brilliance long ago. At first, I had to step in myself just to get the soldiers to follow her. Ada Starlight, a D-rank girl who appeared out of nowhere, barking orders at them. But somehow, she turned things around in no time. Now they follow her without question. She possessed a unique kind of charm, a charisma that drew people in effortlessly. I suppose she was born to lead. Unlike me, I was born to crawl through the dirt of enemy lands. I chuckled softly, and Carmen did the same. Each of you is special in your own way. Sounds like you've started favoring her over me. Wasn't I the one who caught your attention back then? I smiled, recalling the early days in the Starlight family. Back when Carmen had saved me from death. We had come a long way since then.